But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
What?
If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor.
What difference at this point does it make?
Doesn't make sense.
If you're looking to make sense out of what's going on in the world today, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Southern Sense Talk Radio with your host, Annie, the Radio Chick-A-Dee, and featuring Curtis C.S. Bennett and the most interesting guests that you'll find anywhere on Internet radio. And you can join the show and let your voice be heard by dialing 917-889-3675. So sit back, relax, and remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
Friends, we now live in a very dangerous world. The unthinkable can happen any day now. When it does, get ready for massive food shortages to happen quickly. Look at what is going on with baby formula right now. That means the smart thing to do is prepare for the worst now. You need emergency food to get you through whatever happens next. And with this administration, Lord knows. And we highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's largest emergency preparedness company. Act quickly, and you'll save $150 off their essential supplies. These emergency kits are 3 months, which contains an abundance of delicious food that provides more than 2,000 calories a day. You get breakfasts, lunches, dinners, drinks, and even snacks for a whole 3 months' worth per person. This is something every American family will need soon. And believe me, you will need it soon. Your shipment will ship quickly in unmarked boxes for your privacy. So go to prepare. Go to my website, Southern Sense, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com, and click on the My Patriot Food display right in the upper left-hand corner. And you'll save $150 on every 3-month food kit. But you got to do it now. That is, go to Southern-Sense, Southern with sense with a hyphen in the middle, southernsense.com. So don't be a victim. Survive whatever this administration is going to throw at you and avoid the government food lines. So once again, go to my website, Southern Sense, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com, and be prepared. All right, and welcome back, excuse me, to another adventure here on Southern Sense. You're listening live on Blog Talk Radio, SHR Media, Global Enlightenment Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, and now back up on YouTube. When you go to YouTube, just key in the word Southern and the word Sense, Southern Sense, and my smiling face will pop up back once again. There's no subscribers on there just yet, so pop on over, become a subscriber, and help me get the YouTube channel back up and running and in full gear again. But we're back on YouTube, yay. Also Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, half a dozen other places. Just go to the radio show, click on southern-sense.com. I'm your hostess with the least mostest, the Radio Chick-A-Dee, Eddie, along with my co-host, Curtis C.S. Courageous Bennett. Welcome back, Curtis. Want to say hi to everyone that is now going over to Facebook page for Southern Sense, the new YouTube page for Southern Sense. Also, our page, we have the video going up over there for southern-sense.com. And those that are listening here on the chat room in Blog Talk Radio. All in one breath. How'd that go? Without messing up too badly.
Oh, great. You got the pipes. That's all I can say.
Well, we got ourselves a great lineup. We're starting off with former Florida Lieutenant Governor Jennifer Carroll. She'll be joining us. Jerome Corsi has a brand new book out, The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change, Exposing Climate Lies in an Age of Disinformation. Boy, that is a mouthful. Then we have retired U.S. Navy Commander Demetrius Andrew Grimes. He's running for the new congressional seat just formed in Florida, District 15. Alan Chasten, he was a contractor over in Afghanistan, and he with another gentleman are writing about the Pony Express that was going on, that was getting supplies and mail back and forth to the troops over there. It's called Postcards Through Hell. That should be coming out, I believe, this fall. And we're going to end the show, with my one, my only, my true favorite from the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. I just love saying his name. And they've got some new truths about the 2020 elections and all the shenanigans that are just starting to come to the surface. Oh, my goodness. And of course, it's not going to undo the election. Joe Biden still will be president. But let's be prepared for the 2022 and 2024, because they're going to try to pull something again. You know it. I know it, Curtis.
Yeah, and like we were talking before the show started, I found the article about the congressional baseball game, and Republicans did win 10-0, and one of the Democrat members had the nerve to give the Republicans the middle finger, you know. I tell you, such sportsmanship.
Such class from our elected
Such class,
officials.
yeah. Out the window. Man.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's, I guess that's a forerunner of things to come. It doesn't look too good for them. And Joe is still out there denying that we're in a recession.
Oh, they've redefined the word inflation and recession. So instead of doing anything to fix it, what else would they do but redefine the word? So we're not in inflation according to their definition. We're not heading into a recession according to their new definition. Just like what is a woman, a new definition. Oh, give me a freaking break.
Yeah. Can you imagine if the tables would turn and Trump was in office and that report came out on, about his economy, would the Democrats say, hey, Trump, don't listen to that report?
Yeah.
Heck no, they'd be writing stories day in and day out about it.
Oh, yeah.
This guy's running the country into the ground.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as Duck mentions in the chat room here, that you mentioned Trump at his golf course in New Jersey. They're starting the first round of the Live golf tournament. He's catching a lot of flack there because it's a Saudi-sponsored tournament that has a lot of high players in the former PGA players, I should say, former PGA champs, like Phil Mickelson, Dave Love, and you name it, they're there. It's big money, and it's a big industry. But now you have some of the families of the 9/11 victims that are protesting. But look at the PGA, who has, I believe it's 23 different sponsors that have big investments in Saudi Arabia. Starbucks, Uber. They had a list of them up on Newsmax. Disney. All these woke companies have huge investments in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia has huge investments in these companies. So these are all PGA sponsors. So what's wrong here? The hypocrisy that we're seeing in the battle between the PGA and the LIV is absolutely phenomenal. I mean,
They have no shame.
yeah.
No shame in their game.
Are there human rights, issues here in Saudi Arabia? Well, they're working on it. I can admit that. Am I thrilled about the human rights violations? No. But we don't ask any other country to meddle in our country. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. With this administration, Joe Biden, I'll take that back. But our normal position is, that's your country. You do what you want there. This is our country. Leave us the frig alone. Anyway, that said, I want to mention there is a major disaster happening in Kentucky. I believe it's the North Fork River that has crested at 43 going on to 44 feet, historic cresting. And so far, 16 people have died. The vast majority of them have been children and the elderly. And rescues are still going on. And they're expecting even more rain today and tomorrow. So, folks, please say a prayer for them out in Kentucky and do something a little bit more. Go and make a donation to the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, Samaritan's Purse, because they're going to be the boots on the ground to help these people that are lost their homes, lost their businesses, lost family members. So let's get ready to pitch in and help these people out here. Let's start the help here at home for people that really, truly need it. That said, we'll go on from here, Curtis, because I'm watching the clock. And anyone that watches the show or listens to the show knows that we start off each and every one with a dedication to a fallen hero. And unfortunately for this hero, there is not a lot written. And that is a shame because she put her life on the line to save others. Today's dedication is going to go out to Sergeant Barbara Majors Fenley of the Eastland County Sheriff's Office in Texas. Her end of watch was Thursday, March 17th, 2022, just a matter of a few days before her birthday. And this is from, I'm looking for the Texas Bee, and it's written by James Munoz in crossroadtoday.com. It's titled Longtime Deputy with Eastland County Sheriff's Office Dies in the Line of Duty. And he writes, the Eastland County Sheriff's Office is mourning the loss of Sergeant Barbara Majors Fenley. She died Thursday, March 17th, after multiple fires erupted across Eastland County. One of the fires crossed into Carbon, Texas, where law enforcement officers helped with traffic and evacuations. At last report, Sergeant Fenley was going to check on an elderly person. At some point, Sergeant Fenley ran off the roadway and was trapped in the fire. The Eastland County Sheriff's Office released the following statement. Sergeant Fenley gave her life in the service of others and loved her community. Sergeant Fenley began her law enforcement career with the city of Gorman, September 5, 2003, as a patrol officer. She was later appointed as Gorman Chief of Police in January of 2007. She served as chief until 2013, when she became a deputy for the Eastland County Sheriff's Office, where she has worked since. Sergeant Fenley was 51 years old and survived by her husband and 3 children. She will be deeply missed. And this is from CBS News out of Dallas, Fort Worth. And they read, Eastland County Deputy Barbara Fenley died while trying to save people from massive fires Thursday night, March 17th. The Cisco Police Department confirmed the tragic news Friday afternoon on the 18th. Is with a heavy heart that today we learned of the death of one of our Eastland County deputies who put it all on the line last night trying to save people from the horrible fires, the Cisco Police Department said on their Facebook page. Our sister, Barbara Finley, will be deeply missed. She was a special servant and an attribute to our profession. We will kneel in prayer for her family, friends, and colleagues as they mourn. Rest in peace, dear friend. You will be missed. The Eastland County Sheriff's deputy was driving to evacuate residents when her patrol car became stuck in a pasture, and she was surrounded by a fast-moving wildfire. She was about 15 feet away from her vehicle when the fire got to her, and she couldn't make it, said her sister-in-law, Anna Oliveira. Oliveira said Finley was dedicated to service and helping others. She was a good woman. She loved her community. She loved her job. Governor Greg Abbott mentioned Finley in a statement on Friday on the Eastland Complex fire. I also asked Texans to join me on praying for those who have been affected by these wildfires, including Eastland County Deputy Barbara Finley, who was tragically killed while trying to save lives. We will never forget her service, and the state will continue to work closely with first responders and local leaders to mitigate these fires and support our communities as they recover, he said. Approximately 45,000 acres have burned in the fires that was started on Thursday. The Texas A&M Forest Service said around 8:20 p.m., the Eastland Complex fire was 15% contained. There are no other reports of deaths or serious injuries. The community of Gorman and Carbon are reportedly almost completely destroyed. And from her obituary, it reads, very simply and very short, Barbara Ann Finley, age 51, of Gorman, passed away on Thursday, March 17, 2022. Barbara was born on March 22, 1970, in Cleburne, Texas, to Johnny Wesley Majors and Vicki Nip Majors. Barbara loved her family very much and cared for others so deeply that she lost her life trying to evacuate families from the devastating Eastland Complex fires. She served as the chief of police in Gorman for a while. She was an Eastland County sergeant, and most recently, she worked as a bailiff for the Eastland County District Court. She is survived by her mother, Vicki Majors, her husband, Joe Oliveira, sons Jonathan Finley and wife Haley of Gorman, Sheldon Finley of Gorman, Trent Finley and girlfriend Dylas Fulfer of Gorman, and Grammy's baby. Lenton and Wesley Finley, sister Cindy Russell and husband Gary of Dublin, Donna Cistern and husband Scott of Gorman. Today's show is dedicated to Sergeant Finley. It is also dedicated to all the other brave men and women that serve as first responders here at home, be they law enforcement, firefighters, or emergency services. We also dedicate this show to the brave men and women that serve this nation in our military, from its glorious birth through today and into our future. And we dedicate to them this song by Todd Allen Herrington, My Name is America. May God bless you.
Born in the grip of oppression, I fought for my liberty. I paid with the blood of my people. Freedom has never been free. Now my door's always open to dreamers and friends. When I'm attacked, I protect and defend, because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. others. Others gave it to me. They believe in the virtues I stand for, my respect for humanity. Now I'm challenged by tyrants who envy my power, but their vicious deeds become my finest hour, because my name is America. I stand proud and free. My name is America. Don't tread on me. I cannot be broken. I cannot be shamed. If you hurt me, I'll get stronger, and I'll rise up from the flames, and I'll always stand proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. America is my name. For those who need me, I'll always be here. For those who will harm me, I'll face without fear. But I'll always stay proud and free. I'm America, don't tread on me. I'm America, yes, America is my name. Is my
Right, and we're back here. You're listening to Southern Sense live on Blog Talk Radio, SHRI Media, Global Enlightenment Radio, iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, Facebook, iHeartRadio, half a dozen other places, especially our homepage. The name of the show, Southern Sense, put a dash in the middle, southern-sense.com, of course. I'm your hostess with the least most, just the Radio Chick-A-Dee, Annie, along with my courageous co-host, Curtis C.S. Bennett. Curtis, as we're waiting for Jennifer to call in, oh man, we have a person in the chat room over here on Facebook, Stacy, who said she's there in Kentucky, that's her home state, and she's questioning whether or not the dam may have been compromised, which is causing this flooding. That's going to be interesting as we follow it as it goes along. But I do recommend that whatever caused this, right now our focus should be on the people on the ground, doing the rescues, those that are being rescued, those that are still stranded. Let's give a hand wherever you are throughout this nation or throughout the world. Get a hold of the Red Cross, make a donation over there. Seems like my volume's a little down. Okay, we'll try to put that up a little bit. Make a donation to the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and the Samaritan's Purse, because they're going to be the boots on the ground to help these victims and the rescue workers, and consequently, in the end, also the ones that are going to be out there to do the recovery. So please be generous with them and help our people here at home above all else. That said, okay, Curtis, what else have we got before Carroll calls in? Jennifer calls in.
I think we were also talking about this this denial, this Obama administration. Did I say Obama?
Yeah.
It's pretty much like the Obama. The Biden administration. I'm sure he's running things. But they're in a state of denial, and it's just weird because everybody in America is feeling a pinch, even the business people, because they can't man their stores, especially in the service field, with people to keep their businesses open or, for different shifts or whatever. And it's just horrible. Everywhere I go, I see signs saying, now hiring, or we'll give you $2,000 bonus just to sign up. And even our military is falling short of its recruiting, goals. And I mean, all 5 branches, and it's just horrible. But this guy's saying, oh, everything's all right, I disagree with the report. Don't listen to them. Listen to me. Vote for me. And apparently 25% of Democrats think he's doing a great job. So I don't know.
Well, that means
we got Disneyland here. I don't know. He must live in La La Land.
Well, that means 75% of his supporters believe he's not doing a good job. And why am I getting feedback?
And that's good. I'm not sure.
All right, let's try that. Okay, it was coming from my end. All right. All right, my bad. I clicked on the wrong thing. It's when you have 2 computers going at the same time. Yeah, trying to keep something straight.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, my nose is itching like crazy. There's something in my office that I think I'm allergic to. Might be the radio
But
show.
I'm telling you, Americans are not buying his story because it's hurting them in the pockets.
Yeah.
And, they're not going to forget that in November. They're not thinking about the January 6th anything, They weren't about, baby formula and the high cost of gas. Wow.
Well, when gas goes up, the gasoline prices, diesel prices, oil prices go up. That means everything also goes up because you got to be able to get the stuff to the market. You got to be able to manufacture it. And everything does rely on petroleum. Now, he's cut off our petroleum production, which means that we have to import our petroleum at a higher price than ourselves producing it here at home and refining it here at home. And so once those costs go up, you see it on the grocery shelves, you see it in service industries. It's not just the gas pump. It is completely across the board. And I do believe this is our guest calling in. Is it, Curtis?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's bring her on. And welcome back to the show, former Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Florida, the free state of Florida, Jennifer Carroll. Good afternoon, Jennifer. How are you today?
Oh, doing very well. You are hearing from Florida, the oasis of freedom, because we have a governor that is no nonsense, that adheres to the Constitution and adheres to the 10th Amendment for our state's rights and adheres to that it is a people's republic where the government is representing the people and what the people want. So for the rest of your listeners out there, that's what they should demand from their elected officials as well.
Yeah, well, here I am in the state of South Carolina, so we're not too far behind you, but we keep our foot, on McMaster's desk going, come on, kick him once every while. Go, hey, let's do the same thing Florida's doing. Well, that's what we have to do.
funny thing is, the thing is that we get too complacent because when things are going nice and smooth and we don't have any terrorists blowing up anything in New York or anywhere else, that we tend to think that all is well. But at that particular point is when the people really need to start pulling back the government that they have elected and investigate what is really being done behind the scenes. For example, all of the money we've given Ukraine, or so we think. Where is it going? Who is handling those dollars, and what is it being accounted for? There's nothing in any of the Republicans or Democrats of the monies that we've already given Ukraine to give us a line item as to what equipment, what services, what ammunition we have provided for them, and what was the end result. We have another Moderna is going to get X amount of millions of dollars from the Biden administration for a vaccine that's not even signed off yet for its effectiveness. So how can the Biden administration give so much money to a pharmaceutical company where their vaccine effectiveness is not even yet signed off by the authorities, the health industry? So who's getting the money? Who are the lobbyists? Who are the pockets that are being lined by the American taxpayer dollars? So we cannot be asleep at the wheel assuming that things are being taken care of for us, and next minute we're in a recession, or we're not in a recession, and then we are in a recession, and now we're really in a recession, and people are hurting to buy diapers, hurting to put food on the table, hurting to go on vacations. Look at our airlines. They reduced the legs of many hubs that they were flying into, and they have a shortage of staff because we tried to inject them with a vaccine that they did not want. So they had early retirement. Then we got into a period of time where we don't have people that are well trained in their flight hours to even get behind a cockpit. You have staffing as far as the stewardesses that have either left or retired. Even in our military, we have a shortage now, both in all of our services, because of the vaccine mandates, and it's unconscionable that people that have given and sacrificed themselves for our country, which is less than the 11% of the people have done so in our country, and here our government is going to force them to do something, just like they did the anthrax, and we see what happened with the anthrax, that people had side effects that now the government have to give them disability for, and you would rather them give up or lose their pension or the amount of years in service and not get a pension for forcing them to get a vaccine. Those things are unconscionable for our government that we have elected to represent us. And these people are operating like the Gestapo.
You know, there's if I were to break down just what you went through, we can go on for the next 5 hours. Easily, very easily go on. Because you mentioned the Moderna new vaccine that's coming out. And each and every one of these COVID-19 vaccines are experimental. Now, according to the CDC regulations, you cannot force someone to take an experimental vaccine, drug, treatment, therapy, whatever. If it's still deemed experimental and it is not officially approved and tested, and we know down the road exactly what the side effects are, who should have it, who should, that hasn't all been done. These are all just experimental, not officially approved.
They're throwing things against. They're throwing things against the wall. And here is why it's experimental, and they're utilizing it under the emergency use, so that when people are negatively impacted by their vaccination, they cannot sue anyone. There's no recourse for them to sue anyone. And that's also unconscionable, because if the government is not familiar with and have done a study for 15, 20 years with their various cohorts to see what's the impact, whether people are taking X types of medicine and how that is negatively impacted with the vaccine, and or their genetics and how that is negatively impacted by the vaccine, or race and gender and environmental impacts that may be negative to the vaccine. And so if anyone is in that cohort where they will be negatively impacted by the vaccine and become negatively impacted by the vaccine, they have no financial recourse to sue anyone, not the pharmaceutical and not the government.
That's completely correct. And right now I have a dear friend of mine. He lost his 11-year-old grandson because of the vaccine. 11 years old, and this kid has a heart attack. Here one day after...
Well, talk about that.
Yeah. I have a dear friend of mine. He got the vaccine, and he now has this huge lump on his arm that is not going away. You know, my sister had
COVID. And you see, these are things.
She had COVID, and she goes and gets the vaccine, and she gets just as sick for just as long. She had long COVID. So, you know.
You see, these are the things that if they truly did a study with the cohorts, they'll be able to have the data to present, because when we look at any pharmaceutical commercial on the TV, it tells you it could do this, 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 and the other. They have the disclaimers. They let you know up front. With the COVID vaccine, I don't care if it's the Omicron variant or not, they're not telling you what the vaccine could potentially do. Today, there was an article that came out of 3 doctors from the same hospital died suddenly in the same week after the hospital mandated their 4th vaccination.
Yeah.
That's in Canada that occurred. So here you are, and it's interesting that the money that's going to Moderna for this potential vaccine that's not deemed effective as yet, it says, it guards against the Omicron variant, the same one that President Biden got. So therefore, you have to run out and get it. First of all, how do we know that President Biden got what particular variant? They didn't tell us that when he got tested.
Nope.
So how come you're telling us that a week later that this vaccination that you want to give all the taxpayer dollars to Moderna is the one that would help anyone else get any variation of the Omicron variant? It's really unconscionable how they are taking the American public and misusing and abusing the power that we've entrusted in them.
Well, why don't we go back to the NIH that Fauci was running and all of the scientists that helped to develop various therapies, medications, and so forth. And while they were working for the NIH, they were getting grant money and royalty money to process these very things. So now you got Moderna getting stuff approved and Pfizer getting approved and all these other medical companies paying out royalties to government employees, which is tantamount to a legal bribe. Which they're bribing these guys to approve this stuff. Now, how many millions of dollars did these scientists and doctors pocket, including Fauci and his wife, who has a job that no one can quite determine what it is within the NIH? You know, they are in bed together. This is major, major money, and it's coming on the taxpayer's dime and at the risk of our very health and life.
Well, here's the other thing. Talking about Fauci, people don't realize how many patents that Fauci owns during the course of time that he's been with the NIH. He's the one that's been doling out the money for research and at the various centers that are doing either research and other patent developments. And he himself owns some of these patents that we have given him a salary to work for. How many of us can go to work for any company and say, because I exist here and I'm doling out the money, I own X amount of stock. Every time you provide a salary to me, I get X amount of stock from this company. None of us can do that. But he's been able to do that with these patents. And patents, when things are developed, whether it's the vaccine that's developed or a pill for something or a cure for something, and it's through that patent and that license for that patent, that's another thing he owns, licenses. He gets mega millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
Even to the point of billions of dollars. So just because he's retiring with a six-figure salary of over $400,000, that's pennies compared to the other enrichment that he's received and will receive in the future.
Add on to his salary all the benefits that get tied to that also. His medical, his insurance, and la-di-da-di-da, and whatever he walks away from. So he's getting the pension plus the benefits as he walks away as a government employee. Now he gets all these royalties and patents, which he can then put in his will and give to his children and grandchildren, and
Absolutely.
they in turn go down. So we created a billionaire on the taxpayer dime.
A mega billionaire. As Donald Trump would say, a MAGA billionaire.
I mean,
Lieutenant Governor.
Yes,
if you
sir.
start to roll back the layers, you'd be amazed at what we're finding. Go ahead, Curtis.
Annie and I were just talking before you came aboard with us about how 25%, there's still 25% of Democrats out there that think Biden's doing a great job. But that means there's 75% who aren't. And I think that's because of the reality, our economic realities, and what you were just talking about, you know, how these folks that we pay a government salary for are making millions on the side because of their lobbying or their, you know, personal interests and things like that. And I think people are beginning to wake up, and it doesn't bode well for the left and their agenda coming up in the midterms, I believe. What are your thoughts?
Well, here are a couple of things. And after being in government and being out of government, I watch government with a skeptical eye, no matter who is speaking to me. No matter what message is coming out, I peel that onion back. And that's how, unfortunately, we've come today that we cannot really trust the people that we've elected to office to do what's right by us and give us the truth. First of all, giving us the truth will create an uproar, and that person may lose their seat. And everyone that's elected, their objective is getting reelected. The objective is not doing what's right, and even if I lose my seat, at least I can look at myself in the mirror and know that I did what was right. So just keep that in mind. Every elected person, their objective is getting reelected. So it's not about you, the people. That's why the people have to force these people to be honest with them and probe the question when they come back into the district. Say, I don't want you telling me what that person did or didn't do that prevented you from doing your job. I elected you to do a job for me, and if you're going to blame someone else, then you are the fault and you need to be voted out of office. With regards to Biden's 25%, unfortunately, you're going to always have that sort of percentage that likes something that nobody else likes. And you wonder, do you have a brain? Hello. But that's just the realities of statistics and looking at doing polls and so forth. It all depends on the question that's asked, too. Then you have those that say, well, I don't think he's doing a great job because the economy, it is what it is, and I can't afford this. I have seen a 50% reduction in my retirement accounts. A 50% reduction in 18 months. I know if I'm seeing that, many others who thought they were going to be retiring soon or thought they had enough nest egg to retire is also realizing that. So they're looking at that and saying, well, I don't have discretionary income as I had under Trump. My portfolio for retirement is not looking good like it did under Trump, and I don't like this Biden guy. However, if Trump gets back on the scene and he runs again, and you have the January 6th stuff there, and you got this messaging that they put in people's minds that this insurrection was caused by Trump, and he orchestrated, and he told people to do this, that, and the other thing, without the truth being exposed, and you will still have a good percentage of people say, I'd rather still keep Biden in there. Even though I'm hurting, I'll keep him in there, not Trump again. I can't take the tweets. I can't take his mouth. But when he was in office, you didn't mind taking the benefits that his policies provided you for income, for home ownership, for discretionary funds that you had, for enabling yourself to pass on and will a good a pension and retirement or savings to your heirs. So people need to go away from the personalities and look at the policies and see what party or person I can benefit from for myself immediately, for myself for the future, and for my family. And that's where their thought, for the independents and the Republicans and Democrats, that's where their thought processes need to be. And voters are very fickle because 1 week, 1 day, 1 month before the election, we have energy independence, we have the economy rolling again, and the stock market is looking good. These same people that said they don't prefer Biden in office will turn around and vote for him again. And then if he gets back in, it's going to be the same scenario again. Like, how many times do you have to bash your head against the wall to realize that that's insanity? And that's exactly what it's going to be. And unfortunately, during election cycles, we see the voters be fooled. They're fooled with messaging. They're fooled with that there's a nice rosy looking plant and flower in front of you, so therefore that's what you have to go for. And then when you vote for it, all the flowers fall off and you realize it was just a twig in the back. And so folks have to go into this next election non-emotional. Look at the facts for the past, particularly this 2022 election. In the midterm election, the facts are we were energy independent, we had a surplus of energy, and we had jobs galore, and we had an economy that was doing fantastic. We had a president that was calling out China, North Korea, and Russia. We had a president that stood up to the Taliban and said, I'm not going to have you guys threaten our country. We had a president that stood up to Iran and said, you're not going to be part of a nuclear monopoly here, that we're not going to tolerate that. And he stood up to everyone every day, all the barrage of negativism that went his way from the press and the Democrats and the never-Trumpers. And this man stood up for country and stood up for the American public. And he did not even accept a salary. His salary, and folks forget this, his salary went to charity. His salary went to military organizations and other charities. Well, granted, people say, well, he's a millionaire, he could afford it. Well, if you're a millionaire, how many charities are you giving out money to? You know, your whole salary are you giving out money to? I don't know too many people that do that. You know, so the thing about it is that I don't think we should put much stock into what we're seeing with the polls and who doesn't like Biden and who likes him. At the end of the day, if things are going well, a week or a month before election, people are going to go back to their old pattern and vote the same way, and they're going to get the same results at the end of the day.
Exactly. And the Democrats are very good on playing on emotions. You know, we as conservatives think logically. We look at something, is it black or white? Is it 1 and 1 equaling 2? Or is you coming up with a wrong answer? You know, we look for facts and we deal with facts. And we've got to learn how to pull that heartstring and that purse string. If we can do it as a kitchen table issue, as a pocket wallet issue, if we can do it as a heartstring issue, we can win. But we don't have that mindset. And unless we can form that mindset, the Democrats are going to keep on giving us more and more Joe Bidens and Queen Kamala.
Well, God do, and what's her name in Liz Cheney's. You know, and we cannot afford that anymore for our country. If we love our country as we say we do, and we want to pass on a better country to future generations as we say we do, then we can no longer vote for people that don't have our best interests at heart. The other thing, too, is that if Republicans are successful in taking over the House and Senate in the 2022 election, by Christ, do something. When we have Paul Ryan and he's, oh, you elect us and we're going to, when we take the majority, we're going to do away with Obamacare and put something better on the table and blah, 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 and we're going to make our taxes where you can only do this on a 5x7 card. I haven't seen my taxes on a 5x7 card ever since I've been alive. And it certainly didn't happen on a Paul Ryan. And when President Trump came into office, he goes, all right, we ran on Obamacare that we're going to get rid of it and put something more affordable and more reasonable in place. Paul Ryan and his crew had no plan whatsoever. They failed at that. So the Republicans cannot go into office with a weak need and weak back and not stand up for the things that they promised in the campaign trail. So if they're saying, when you get us back in and we're going to do an investigation on Hunter Biden and his father's dealings, well, the same thing happened with Hillary Clinton when they said that they were going to investigate Hillary Clinton with her foundation and all the money that they've received from China and renting out the Lincoln bedroom and all this stuff. And Trump got into office, and the establishment said, no, we can't really go after Hillary Clinton. You know, she's already gone. Don't do anything about it. So don't campaign and tell us you're going to do one thing, and then you want to run all these investigations, and nothing happens at the end of the day. We have a two-tier justice system right now. Those that have a bunch of money to write themselves out of a ticket, and those that are on the Democrat side that can easily say and do whatever they want and walk away with it, and no one bats an eye. And then you have your average Joe Schmo that can't even afford attorney's fees, they will lose all of their family's savings and earnings, and probably locked up in a prison for misdemeanor or something that they could have easily defended themselves about. But then you see folks like Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden and others just walking around that have criminal activity that clearly has evidence that's been presented. The DOJ and FBI and the CIA covering things up at the highest level, and Comey and Brennan and all of them lied through their teeth, and now they're collecting millions of dollars in contracts and doing other things and free as a bird, and no accountability for what they have done to this country.
Well, we watch time and time. I'm sorry, Chris. We see time and time. We see them getting before Congress and lying before Congress, not held in contempt. You don't have the sergeant of arms serving a warrant on them. But Steve Bannon, oh, heaven forbid, it's a conservative, and may have denied, evidence being handed over because of executive privilege. but he gets a warrant. You know, you have, what is his name? Peter Navarro, chained, feet and hands shackled and strip searched for what? Exerting executive privilege because he was an aide to President Trump. But no. We have there's one set of rules for the left, and then for every other schmuck out there, heaven forbid, there's no constitution. That doesn't even exist anymore. I'm sorry, Curtis. I get so pissed off when I say stuff.
I was just going to say Pence was recorded the other day pretty much with the mindset that what happened in the past is in the past. We need to move on. And it's like, let bygones be bygones. You know, they're not interested in trying to find out what happened in 2020. They have no interest. And the lieutenant governor was right. We have to find a way to get those who only look at personalities, because that's the way the left is framing everything, or personalities, especially with Trump. And instead of that, to look at results. And that is what I'm trying to do when I reach out to my friends and my family members in the minority communities. You know, look at the high food prices and look at the gas prices and look at, your government intrusion on your rights and things like that. Did any of this happen under Trump? So, y'all need to focus on results and not personalities. And I think that's the path to winning these folks over.
And we also have to have a level of honesty. You cannot say that if Trump sends out a tweet that bothers you, but seeing the president's son flying on Air Force Two, lobbying and negotiating with foreign governments, enriching himself and his family, doing something and not registered as a foreign agent on our taxpayer dollars, that's a fine. It's against the law, and say that doesn't bother you. You cannot say that the president's son, the president who says he had no idea of the son's dealings and didn't speak to his business partners, but yet still you're on a golf course with a picture with them. There's evidence in the emails about your payment and your involvement with the business operation, and that doesn't bother you. But the former president foundation that has, so far, they haven't unveiled anything with the foundation have improprieties, but the foundation had to shut down because every Tom, Dick, and Harry in New York City wanted to investigate the foundation. And here you have Hillary Clinton's foundation that's accepted money from the Chinese, which is a clear violation of the law again, and they get a pass. You cannot say, well, one bothers you and the other doesn't. You have to be intellectually honest with yourself that if a crime is a crime, no matter who commits the crime, if it's on your side or the other side, that you have to call it out, and you don't condone it. You don't say that that's okay because it's on my side, we'll turn a blind eye. That is wrong, because how are we raising our children? How are we raising a society of a level of honesty? Once we turn a blind eye to what we're seeing is wrong on our side, I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat side, we then lose credibility in any conversation.
Like I said, we can go on for the next 5 hours just trying to peel away on the onion, and we'll never get to the core of it, honestly. But it has to start somewhere. And I think the conversations is starting to happen. This administration, I think, has opened a lot of people's eyes, and more people are starting to talk about it. And you're also seeing on the Democratic side where they're saying, all right, wait a minute, Joe Biden's got to go. But who are they putting in place for Joe Biden? It's not Queen Camilla, thank God. No, it's Queen Hillary. They're going to drag her back out again. I guarantee it, just to keep Bernie Sanders from running.
Well, the other thing too, you have Pelosi's. I think he's her
husband,
her relative is I don't know if a cousin or something, but in California, Gavin Newsom.
Oh, right.
Gavin Newsom, you're doing a horrible job in California, and you, by ego, want to run for president to do what? to make the rest of the country just as bad, where you have needles on the street and kids are bused home. They have to cross over these homeless people on the streets with all these drug needles and gun violence and so forth. And you did such a horrible job, plus Nancy Pelosi, in the state of California, that now you want to come and run for president, and with no plan of action to make this country, since you have the largest state in the union, and one of the largest states in the union, and you can't even handle that, how are you going to handle the rest of the country? So these throwbacks and these people with their ideology that the rest of us have to suffer while they stay on top is a class sort of system that they want to implement in this country. We have one of the best class in this country is the middle class. And because of the middle class, this country is enabling people who want to excel and move up the ladder to be able to do so. If we were in India, you're on the top or the bottom. If you're in China, it's the same thing. You're not going to be able to get into that upper echelon. Everybody, they have the mega million now that's $1.2 billion, and people are probably going to be taking out loans and who knows what to buy a ticket to make it into that upper class. Well, when you do, you have taxes to pay. You need to get a tax shelter, and you think you can do that in other countries that have a class system that keep the top on the top and the bottom on the bottom? That's why this country is so great. That's why people are they're dying coming into this country. They're sending their kids without any adult supervision to get them in this country so they will have a better life. And we are throwing it away when we're sitting at the table talking about, well, we can call it a she, he, her, and we have all these protected class and so forth. And in other countries, third world countries, they're teaching their kids the basics of math and science. They're teaching their kids how to fix and develop AI. And AI is replacing our workforce here in this country while we're sitting down painting our hair all different kind of colors and don't want to show up for work and just want to collect a government check and stay home. And our country will go down the tubes, and foreigners will come in here and take over our country, and we wouldn't even know what happened. In generations to come, if we don't step up now and protect and guard our country that's less than 250 years old, with the Constitution that we have in place, with the rights and privileges and freedoms and liberties that we have in place, that we are taking for granted, that if we don't stand up and safeguard those things, we will lose it, and future generations will not know what we have squandered.
Now, and already we have foreign nations with huge investments here in the United States. Communist China is the biggest investor right now in the United States. And I've warned about this many years ago. I've had many guests on, including General Spaulding, who has a great book out about that, came out about 2 years ago. Gordon Chang is a friend of mine, but no one is paying attention to the foreign investments. And I warned about this. They're buying up farmland. They have been buying up food processing factories. Every time I see something in Smithfield in the grocery store, I go, I'm sorry, I'm not going to support Communist China. I'm not buying Smithfield. You start looking at how many of these companies that are on your daily grocery shelf that is now owned by Communist China. You go into Walmart, and I dare anyone to pick up 10 items, and 9 out of those 10 items will be made in China. You know,
well, we have sold our soul to China from the time they bought iconic buildings in New York, and now they're smart. They're always looking forward. They're always, how can we then monopolize and become that superpower? And one of the things that's concerning with regards to properties they're buying up are properties close to our military installations.
Yes.
They'll be able to either intercept or receive a communication, and the Chinese will tell you in a heartbeat they're good copycats. They would listen, they would get intel, and they will copy exactly what the U.S. government is doing and know what we're doing. And people don't understand that our military is our safeguard for our republic. If we do not have a strong military, if we do not have a military that is 10 steps ahead of the enemy, we would lose everything. They are a safeguard to this republic, and the NBA, they've gone over to China. They've gotten a lot of money. They're silent in any of the Uyghur. The Uyghur Muslims that they have enslaved, they're silent to any of the human rights abuse. The NBA and any other we have a number also, too, elected officials, both state elected officials and federal elected officials that have worked and lobbied for the Chinese government and entities in China. They get lots of money, they get paid really well, and unfortunately the money overrides doing what's right.
Exactly. Well, Jennifer, it has been a pleasure. You're always welcome back. People can find you on your website, which is your name, Jennifer Carroll, with 2 L's. And they can also find out about your best-selling book. Yep. Your best-selling
when you
book.
get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So God bless, Jennifer. And like I said, we could go on
Thank
easily
you.
for 5 hours.
JenniferCarroll.com. Thank you.
All right, take care. God bless.
All right, take care.
Hey, bye-bye. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Check out JenniferCarroll.com, as she said, and check out her book when you get there. Talking about books, and this gentleman, I met, geez, mixing the B's and the M's, I met, believe it or not, back in 2012 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, at the South Carolina Tea Party Coalition Convention when we had them. Dr. Jerome Corsi. Good afternoon, Jerome. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Annie. Good to be back with you. Thank you.
It is our pleasure. You've got a new book that just came out just a couple of days ago, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet. So I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to have you come back on again, because a good friend of mine, Dr. Gregory Wrightstone, was one of the ones that turned me into the truth about global warming. Your book is titled The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change: Exposing Climate Lies in an Age of Disinformation. I managed to do that without messing it up. Oh, I'm so proud of myself.
Well, you did well. I mean, that's good. I think my book seems to be doing very well, and I'm very pleased. Thank you, everybody, for that. And I was on George Noory Coast to Coast last night for 2 hours, and realized that the unique aspect of my book is that I'm really explaining things about climate science that people just don't know. People are not taught climate science in schools. In fact, the way we're teaching everything from chemistry to physics is increasingly politicized. So things that I'm bringing up, I'm going to give you some examples, are eye-opening to people. One of them, first of all, I discuss carbon dioxide is just a trace element in the environment. It's 0.0004% or something like that. And over geological time, it's been much more. 175 million years ago, it's been reducing. Early Earth, going back 4.6 billion years, the Earth's atmosphere was heavily carbon dioxide. By 175 million years ago, it was 7,750 parts per million. Today, it's 400 parts per million. And that's a dramatic reduction. The atmosphere is so huge that carbon dioxide is almost so minimal percentage of the atmosphere that's a trace element. And it's ridiculous to say that it is the driver of Earth's temperature when the driver of heat on Earth is the sun. It's a news flash left. Go outside. The sun heats the Earth. Yeah. That's where we get that big, yellow, orange thing in the sky. Is not a tree ornament. That's the major source. That's the major source of energy and heat on the Earth, not carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not the thermometer of heat on the Earth, unless you want to believe a lot of politicized and distorted pseudoscience.
When we look back, and I always use this example, when Christ walked on the Earth was warmer than it is today. We are actually climbing out of a mini ice age, and people don't believe that. But all you have to do is look at the science. Now, I haven't been able to delve through your entire book, but I'm sure that you've got the stats in there to prove that too. Gregory Wrightstone has it on his, the CO2 Coalition. I have a link to your website so people can pick the book up through you there. I'm urging people to learn more about these Green New Deals and what the purpose is behind it. Now, I'm hearing in the news just this morning that it's going to be passed, that new tax bill, that it also pushes the Green New Deal. They're forcing us down a road that will not make us energy independent, but instead enslave us, won't they?
Yes, it's a Marxist agenda to eliminate capitalism. That's what it's morphed into. And the idea is to deprive the Western world the most powerful source of energy to provide the abundance we have in a global, interglacial global warming period where more trees, more carbon dioxide, still geological time, a minuscule amount of carbon dioxide. We have a greener, more abundant planet. And one of the big awakenings in my book is that oil is not fossil fuel. Hydrocarbons are not made by fossils, not plankton or bacteria or dead plants or dead animals. And I've been proving the theme since I wrote a book called Black Gold Stranglehold in 2005. In this book, I spend a whole chapter on it. I try to introduce the idea this way that, when people die, we bury them because they're going to think they're decomposing.
Mm-hmm.
When we die, the energy that holds our bodies together stops and we reduce into constituent chemicals. We bury people. I have yet to find in recorded history where we dug somebody up who was buried and found oil. We find the Bible does not say dust into oil, it says dust into dust. And for a good reason. That is the second law of thermodynamics, which is what entropy is about, has to do with living things, energy forms, if they're not continually supplied with energy, tend to dissipate. It's also one of the key principles of the Earth's climate, which is to redistribute heat around the globe. When the Earth is hot at the equator, the Earth moves that heat to the poles. It tries to circulate whatever heat there is to the entire planet. The complex system of Earth's climate or weather patterns does not depend on carbon dioxide. So in this book, I show you the equations that were developed, the chemical equations in the Weimar Republic by the German chemists as to how synthetic oil is made. And these equations, Germany had coal, but it did not have oil, and Hitler fueled his war machine largely with synthetic oil made in Fischer-Tropsch processes. These equations are the Fischer-Tropsch equations, and they show you how oil can be synthesized by combining carbon and hydrogen in an environment of high temperature and high pressure with the presence of a catalyst like iron, and all those ingredients are in the mantle of the Earth, where Earth manufactures oil, natural gas, and all hydrocarbon fuels on an ongoing basis. That's where they come from.
Well, we've been watching them take away, oil is bad, drilling for oil is bad, and yet they want to push upon us these green new energies, which are not reliable at all. But how are you going to manufacture these electric cars and other green vehicles without having petrochemicals to make the wiring, the seating, the motor, the tires? I mean, you need petrochemicals for anything and everything in today's society. I dare anyone to name one thing they come in contact with except for the air you breathe outside your home, out in the open, outside of the air you breathe out in the home, that does not involve petrochemicals.
You're right, and that's true. And there's nothing green about wind turbines. They're not green. They're not plants. There's nothing green about solar energy. It's not green. It's very clever propaganda. It is not clean energy. There is no such thing as clean and dirty energy. You can burn hydrocarbons very cleanly. But the point is, the left is winning because they managed to capture the science among a group of people who've been educated in the public school system who don't know science. They can be said we're going to run out of oil because it's fossil fuel. There's only so many fossils. Fossil fuel is a complete misnomer for hydrocarbon fuels. It's almost ridiculous when you look at the fact that we're getting deep earth oil from way in the ocean, way below which there was ever any real significant biological activity. That when the oil pools up through fissure cracks in the bedrock, and I used to debate with the peak oil people, who, by the way, are now all gone because we have an abundance of oil, like I said we did in 2005. The whole process of the oil fields in Saudi Arabia. I give you in this book the tectonic maps, and I show you the bedrock fractures in Saudi Arabia, and they are right underneath the oil fields. Truthfully, Saudi Arabia doesn't know how much oil it's got. It is a supply because it's coming from deep earth oil and natural gas. And it is plentiful. I can't imagine. It's so plentiful, I can't imagine that we will ever run out of it. But with what Biden is doing, I am telling people $5 a gallon for gasoline is going to look cheap pretty soon, given their plans. And truckers are going to have to get ready to pay $20 a gallon for diesel. Now, that sounds ridiculous, but wait until it happens and remember that I said it.
Oh, exactly. And these truckers cannot load up their trucks and transport their freight at $20 a gallon. At $5 and $6 a gallon, they barely make it. They make no money. So when the products come to market, there's no way to transport them to market because the truckers will be put out of business, especially the independent ones. So how are you going to transport stuff? Good question. Freight trains? Oh, that's going to go over real well. How long is it and how much is it going to cost to make those freight trains? And how are you going to power them? Oh, wait a minute. We're going to make them electric, aren't we? And now our power grid can't handle this tax on it. If everyone was to have an electric vehicle, then what do you give up to fuel the vehicle? Your electricity to power your home, your medical equipment. You have to give something else up off the grid in order for these cars to run, or you limit the distance in which the person can travel. So, all right, you can power up one battery a week. So that means you can only go within 5 miles of your home. Gee, that's a nice way to control the population, isn't it, Jerome?
Yes, it's all about control and totalitarianism. But the point I want to make and really stress is that those of us who see the true signs, we're losing this battle because the left doesn't care that it's impractical. When the left can convince your kindergarten student that mommy and daddy are going to deny their future because we were so stupid as to use hydrocarbon fuels and pollute the atmosphere, the earth is going to burn up before they're adults. These children get so afraid that they are saying, let's do anything we can, but let's stop using hydrocarbon fuels. The left wins on this argument because they have distorted the science and people don't understand the science. If hydrocarbon fuels are a natural product of the earth, God put them here, put everything here that we can use and grow with abundance, we can use these hydrocarbon fuels and burn them cleanly, cheaply, and efficiently to provide, go forth and multiply. We're only supporting the number of people we have in the world with the abundance we have because of the interglacial warming period, the vegetation on the earth, the climate that permits us to get productive, and the availability of hydrocarbon fuels. Deny that, and we would not be able to support these billions of people, but the left doesn't care. Now, I want to make one more point on this, just to kind of get people framed into really understanding how little they've been taught. The Earth does go through ice age cycles. It's been doing it about every 100,000 years. We've had ice ages, which last a long period of time. Some of the ice ages cover all the planet, or virtually all the planet, in glaciers. And there's been much more carbon dioxide in geological time while these ice ages have been going on. My book discusses what's known as the Milankovitch cycles. There are a set of intricate statistical analyses and proven how the Earth goes around the sun. The Earth goes around the sun not in a circular orbit, but in an elliptical orbit, like an egg. And sometimes that orbit changes. It gets more elliptical. Now, in the most elliptical, the farthest away from the sun that the Earth ever gets now, it's cold. And ice ages can be shown to correlate with this time in the Milankovitch cycles when the Earth is out in that distance. Remember, sun heats Earth. Mm-hmm. I can show you the statistics the Russian scientists have that when sunspot activity, another factor of the sun driving Earth temperature, when sunspot activity is low, the sun is producing less infrared irradiance, which is where the heat comes from, and it's cooler. More active sun, it's warmer. So the Russian scientists studied the sunspot data from 1617 to 1717, and they determined, as a scientist called Maunder, there was a Maunder minimum in those 100 years because it was a 30-year period in which the sun had 40 to 50 sunspots a year, when it normally has 40 to 50,000 sunspots a year, and the entire solar system cooled down. But it wasn't an ice age because we weren't at a Milankovitch cycle distant point. These little ice ages happen when the sun gets less active. The most important driving factor in Earth's temperature is the sun. It is not carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is such a small percentage of the atmosphere, it couldn't possibly make any difference to drive major temperatures. I can show you what causes major temperatures, and that's another eye-opener.
Well, there's two things that I want to bring out because people don't realize the most abundant thing in our atmosphere that does affect the greenhouse would be water, HO2. However, if we increase the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere, we encourage more plant life, more food, less starvation, better and healthier populations, and more stable governments. The more the government, more the people are happy and content and fed, the more stable governments become, less wars. So we increase CO2, we benefit the planet. We decrease, we starve the planet, then we have worldwide turmoil that we are starting to see right now.
See, the left doesn't care. I spent 3 chapters of this book showing you that this environmental movement came out of the Malthusian movement at the end of World War II. You have people like Paul Ehrlich writing books about the population bomb. There are too many people. We're using up the resources of the earth too fast. We're depleting the earth. We're burning hydrocarbon fuels. We're destroying the planet. So if your child thinks by burning hydrocarbon fuels we're destroying the planet and that we'll have fewer people, it'll be less productive if we stop using hydrocarbon fuels, as long as we're using renewable energies, which they have been taught to think are clean and safe and abundant and work, which they don't, then the kids say, well, what's wrong with you, Mommy and Daddy? Do we want the earth to go away? Maybe there's too many people, so some may need to die. We've wasted the earth's resources by burning this hydrocarbon fuel, and we're destroying ourselves. It's complete nonsense. Hydrocarbon fuels generate carbon dioxide in such a small quantity that it does not add in the atmosphere to any significant amount, because the Earth does not have an additive system in the atmosphere. It's got a very changing climate with feedback systems. People understand how feedback systems work. But, so for instance, it gets warmer, we form more clouds, water vapor in the oceans, which get warmer, create more clouds. The clouds then block sun from another eye-opener to people. Go outside, clouds. You stand under a cloud. Why is it shady? Why doesn't it feel so warm? Well, it's shady because the cloud is the water vapor, which is 70% of the greenhouse gas on Earth, is blocking the visible light, and the water vapor is also blocking the infrared rays from getting as much through. So it's darker shade and cooler shade. That's why we call it shade. Okay, it's nice to be under cloud when the sun is intense. And this is a natural feedback system of the Earth, so the Earth doesn't get too hot. The Earth has these regulatory, regulation methods where the Earth has a temperature setter which tries to distribute the heat around the planet. And no one factor, no single variable in a multivariate nonlinear equation is going to determine the outcome. Again, the kids aren't taught the math.
No.
They aren't taught what a guy named Lorenz knew. Lorenz was a climate scientist. He had an early desktop computer. He had a model of the Earth's climate. He rounded off the numbers of his estimates of temperature and went and got a cup of coffee. When he came back, the computer was producing wildly different future predictions. And what he realized was that very small differences in measurement lead to dramatic differences in result, and that we do not have precise measurements of anything on Earth. In fact, we'll never will, because we can't get them. You have irrational numbers. You take pi, which is the circumference and diameter of a circle, and you can compute decimal points infinitely. Well, the Earth doesn't compute decimal points. The Earth just functions. Our computer models are doomed to be wrong because Lorenz said the chaos mathematics, climate is inherently chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So many things happen, you can't produce the future. And we don't have the mathematics to get a precise, complex model. So the UN and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change saying if we have this much more carbon dioxide, we have this much more heat in the Earth, it's going to they don't have the ability to form that equation unless they rig the data and put assumptions that aren't true into that formula. That's what I show in my book. We're going to have to beat the left by showing the science is fraudulent and convincing our kids that they've been frightened about a boogeyman that doesn't exist.
Yeah, well, you
Jerome.
also talk about the renewable energies. You talk about the wind and the solar. These are both harmful to the environment. The wind turbines, if you put them near a population, causes mental illness because of the vibrations. It kills off the fowl, the birds in migration because they fly into it. You have the solar panels made with what do you call it? The chemicals, the rare earth chemicals and everything that are in there.
Lithium, etc. Yeah, I mean
Right,
batteries
but-
with lithium, for instance.
But you can't just take them and throw them in the local dump because they're toxic to the environment. They have to be specially destroyed. The batteries in the cars that have the rare earth elements, they're toxic to the environment. So these green energies, when they need to be disposed of and replaced, are toxic to the environment. So are you going to kill the environment because you're using oil and gas? Not as likely than if you are using these new, quote, green new energies that are not green at all. All right, go ahead, Chris. We got just a few minutes left with Jerome.
Yeah, I was going to say what's very frustrating to me is that there's a lot of Democrats that listen to stations like NPR and Black Information Channel Network or whatever. So they don't realize that this climate thing, because I mean you can call it climate change or whatever, but they don't realize it's been politicized and that they practically are listening to propaganda. And every day they're being fed that the Earth is getting warmer because of man, not because of anything in nature that happens, every couple of 100,000 of years, but it's the man. And it's hard to get through these people that listen to this stuff. There's a saying, you are what you eat, but I believe your mind is also what you listen to.
This is a very good point, an important point, because what my book is saying is, I consider my book game-changing and fundamentally different from all the other books that have been written on this. All the points about, the renewable energies don't work. Yes, those will not win the debate. They're all true, but they won't, because the left doesn't care. If using hydrocarbon fuels are going to destroy Earth and kill us all, then anything we do is okay, even if it doesn't fully work, even if it means a lower standard of life. It's okay with them. The point is this: it is proper and important to understand how unimportant we are. The Earth has been around 4.6 billion years, and what I demonstrate in this book is that we've been here maybe 10 million years. That's a microsecond. We're just the latest creatures running around on the surface of the Earth. The Earth doesn't adjust to us. The Earth has its own natural mechanisms of regulating temperature, and it's gone through cataclysmic changes. We've had 5 extinctions when there were no people around. And I write about the dinosaurs being extinguished in 65 million years ago and point out it took a huge comet, it was an asteroid, that hit the Yucatan and sent tsunamis up to North Dakota. At the same time, there was thousands of years of volcanic activity going on in India, and that threw sulfur oxide into the atmosphere, which meant photosynthesis was dying, and most of these dinosaurs were eating plants. And third, which people still, this is another one that's like fossil fuel, the continents didn't just have at one time this Gondaland, this Pangea. All the continents were together, and all the water was on the other side. That's not stable because there's 70% of the land mass is water, but water has a much lower mass than Earth. That kind of a planet would spin out of control. What I think is much more reasonable is the expanding Earth theory, which is that in this period of time, 65 million years ago, the Earth dramatically expanded, like taking a tennis ball and popping it up to the size of a grapefruit, the little fuzzy parts of the continents. And in that expansion of Earth, there was an increase of mass, increase of gravity, and creatures the size of dinosaurs were no longer structurally fit because they were too big for the increased gravity. That's another major reason I believe dinosaurs were extinguished. And all this points to the fact that we human beings may think we're very important, but the changes that go on Earth are cataclysmic, and it's uncertain that we are really affecting them at all when you understand the forces needed to do something like cause an extinction or to cause the Earth to warm.
If we look at the history of the Earth, we are just dust in the wind. We're just a little fleck. So, eventually we're going to be extinct. That's going to happen sooner or later, like the dinosaurs. What comes after us, Lord knows. Or what? I mean, no matter what we do, eventually we will become extinct too, right?
Well, the future is hard to predict in that regard. But the point is, the history of the Earth with 5 major extinctions is that it is not an increase or decrease of carbon dioxide that amounts to a hill of beans.
Mm-hmm.
When you have giant asteroids hitting, when you have 1,000 years of volcanic activity, we've got the ring of fire around the Pacific and had it for a long time. The Pacific's been expanding. It's twice the size of the Atlantic. And that could blow it we could have volcanic activity going in the Pacific that could last 1,000 years or thousands of years. We could be hit by another asteroid or comet. Every few weeks you're reading about another asteroid that's going to come close to the Earth, but we didn't even know it was there. I mean, this is not a stable place. The Earth could go through cycle 25 and be in a minimum, and we could enter a new ice age. Of course, the global warmers will say that global warming caused the ice age. That anything that happens, they say, causes this. And this is an ideological agenda, and it's only going to be defeated if we can reduce people's fear. And you can only reduce people's fear by opening their eyes to true science and alerting them and explaining to them in terms they can understand how much they have been lied to about the way Earth's climate works. That's why my book, I think, is a game changer. And I agree with George Norrie last night when he said this could well be another #1 book. I could do it. For me, this has been a passion. It's my 3rd book on energy. I'm a political scientist, but I've got pre-publication reviews which are in the book or on the website or on Amazon, where I've got very, very credible scientists and meteorologists praising the science in this book and saying it's a must-read. This will change if you read my book, which is the truth about energy, global warming, and climate change. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, it's in the bookstores. If you read it, you will not be able to listen to the climate lies with the same conviction. You'll have the ammunition to tell your kids why they're not all going to die because we're burning hydrocarbon fuels.
Well, in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, it was global cooling. We're all going to freeze to death. And I remember insisting on my mom buying me those Earth shoes, which were the world's worst shoes to ever wear. So now the new fear is they couldn't win us over with global cooling because it turned out to be false in the long run. We're now being fed with global warming. It's still another way to use propaganda to control us, to kill the free market economy, and let the elite have everything else while we, the peons, become their servants.
See, you're right again. And the Earth was actually in a very warm period of the 1930s and 1940s. There are articles being written then about the ice caps melting. Then the Earth began in the 50s to cool. So these alarmists, the Malthusians, who really wanted to get rid of people, so they could be in control. Paul Ehrlich, who wrote The Population Bomb, never thought, he wasn't wanting to eliminate him. He was wanting to make everybody else the serfs and have them go away so he could have all the resources for himself and the global elite he thought were worthy to live. When the Earth started warming again at the end of the 70s, they said, we can't sell the Ice Age anymore, so let's sell global warming. We're all going to burn up. It's an ideology. The left does not care which catastrophe they pick or whether it's real, because they're going to construct the story, the narrative. Remember, this critical theory, neo-Marxist left, is all about creating narratives. And they create a narrative demonizing carbon dioxide, even though it does not have science behind it. There's a trace element in the atmosphere, because burning hydrocarbon fuels releases carbon dioxide. They can make this a demon. And if we're all afraid we're going to die because we're using hydrocarbon fuels, we can abandon them, and then we destroy capitalism, and then we destroy the standard of living. Possibly billions of people will die. Do you think the World Economic Forum or Bill Gates would care?
No.
In fact, the strategy is designed, and what I'm saying is the only way we're going to defeat this, and what I've written this book to show, is just how wrong the science is. On our side, people are not educated in the science. They're educated in the politics. They can tell you why, electric cars don't work. But even very few on our side can tell you what the energy coefficients are, and the hydrocarbon fuels, because you combust them, have a stronger energy potential, as opposed to energy like electricity, which you've got to store. It has a lower potential. If we had a solar panel that would, one panel, power a city, you wouldn't have to have a government subsidy. Private industry take that and develop it, and every city in the world would be powered by one of those solar panels. But the truth is, existing technology is not scalable. You can't put one on your roof and save some money maybe with electricity, but you can't power a major industrial city anywhere in the world with solar panels. And Obama tried what Biden's repeating, and we had Cylindras. I wrote a chapter about that, all the bankruptcies, all the billions of dollars we've spent before. We've tried this nightmare before, but we will only defeat it once we can attack the fear. And we can attack the fear by showing how fraudulent the science is. That's why I talk in this book about, the oil not being fossil fuel, the expanding Earth, the cycles of extinction, comets and asteroids hitting the Earth, millions of years of volcanic activity, continents splitting apart because the Earth expanded. These changes are the way the Earth is, and they can happen unpredictably at any moment. And none of them caused by having a little bit more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, going from 400 parts per million to 600 parts or 800 parts per million, when the Earth did just fine with 7,500 parts per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere 175 million years ago. People don't understand this, or that the carbon dioxide concentrations during ice ages, which lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, were much higher and didn't warm a thing on Earth. The ice ages were created because the sun irradiance hitting the Earth, either because of this elliptical orbit being very elliptical or the sun was in a dormant period. That was what caused the ice ages, not carbon dioxide.
Well, I notice here, though, they pushed the Green New Deal here in the United States, in Europe, but they're not pushing it in India or China or Russia. So if the United States become destroyed, our capitalism is destroyed, our economy breaks because of the Green New Deal, because of the climate hoax that we're being foisted on, who's going to step into that vacuum? Our enemies. And who is the one that's providing us with this green new energy crap, like the solar panels and the wind turbines? Oh, gee, isn't it India and China?
It's quite clever mass psychology, which has been known by geniuses for a long time, for millions of years, or hundreds of thousands of years. We haven't been around long enough to be millions of years. But the point is this. Once you can demonize something like carbon dioxide because you want to destroy capitalism, find out an argument, tell people if you keep burning hydrocarbon fuels, you're all going to die. You picked a demon. You pick the true believers. You can mobilize an army of true believers that don't even care about the science. So maybe today, carbon dioxide is what Hitler did by saying it's the Jews that caused everything, and convinced the Germans to be able to create concentration camps and kill a whole generation of very valuable people, create one of the greatest tragedies in the face that's ever happened in human existence. And this folly, we've all got to march off to the Holy Land to take it away from the infidels. And we get the Crusades. They all leave their homes and march across Europe. Witches are being possessed by the devil. We have to kill them all. So now we get the witch hunt. And this is another psychological manipulation of human beings that is going to be very effective and is being very effective, because they managed to convince our children and a huge number of adults that the air we breathe is what's going to kill us, because we're exhaling carbon dioxide. It's part of what we breathe. They want to tax the air we breathe. It's really quite genius.
Yeah.
And convince us that we are our own worst enemy, and there's too many of us, so we'll be better off with fewer. And if we end capitalism and stop using hydrocarbon fuels, we can get by with windmills and solar power, because there won't be so many of us, and we'll have all the abundance we need, because there'll be enough of us for the planet to support sustainably. That's the argument. It's very convincing, and it's going to have to be defeated by really, trying to make people aware that they have been sold a lie on the science. They have been lied to. The Earth doesn't work. Carbon dioxide doesn't work the way they've been told it does. Michael Mann had to rig the statistics on the hockey pucks to make it work. I show that a whole chapter in the book. It is a lie, and a great lie, which real serious physicists and meteorologists and chemists will tell you is a joke.
Well, Jerome, it is always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm glad I've been your friend since 2012. So people can find your book, Jerome Corsi, on your website. There's a link on the show page so they can click on it and get your book, The Truth About Energy, Global Warming, and Climate Change. God bless you, Jerome, and I look forward to seeing you again one day.
God bless. Thank you very much.
All right, check out Jerome Corsi's book. Click on the link, and please download it and read it. We got our next victim. I love doing this to a military man, calling him a victim. Retired Commander Demetrius Andrew Grimes. He's running for the new district in Florida, District 15. Good afternoon, Commander. How are you today?
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be with you. And the website is grimes.gop, grimes.gop. So it's easy for people to look up to read more.
All right, and there is a link here on the show page, so especially when they watch this in the archives, they can click on it and give you support, because we need to keep Florida red, flaming red. We can't let the new sea go somewhere else.
And you nailed it. Flaming red with in the right hue of red, right? As CS would say.
With some hot sauce on it.
But, for anyone who's been following the race in the 15th, I'm up against an army of professional politicians. So, we need all the help that we can get. We've been putting up a good fight. And what I tell people on the trail is members of Congress are on the board of directors of the United States of America, deciding how we're going to spend our blood and treasure dealing with our current threats and challenges as we prepare to defeat our future threats and challenges. And there's nobody in this particular race that's better qualified than myself to serve and to represent and serve the people on day one. I'm a combat experienced naval aviator, a diplomat, and also a former exec at Amazon.
Well, there was a recent article up on Neo magazine talking about you. Tell us about that.
Well, so, I was actually, the most recent article is, I was just on the cover of the Jerusalem Post a few days ago, and I've been endorsed by Ambassador David Friedman. And I'm, for the people who are just getting to know me or don't know anything about me, I am an America First, Constitution First conservative. And of course, like many, especially over the last few years, our positions have evolved. In Florida, we were just talking about this the other day with Mark Levin, that, thanks to our good governor, there are 400,000 more registered Republicans in Florida than we had in 2018. So people are moving from all parties back to the Republican Party, and that's a good thing.
That it is. That is a very good thing. We need to get more Republicans registered, and I'm hoping that some of these people from the left are finally having their eyes wide open with this administration, and they're going to flee the Democratic Party. I've been hearing about a lot of people fleeing the Democratic Party, and for us, that's a good thing. But we've got to be able to hold on to them.
Exactly. We need to hold on to them. And I think, what's happening is people are feeling for the first time, really, I'm old enough to remember Jimmy Carter, when people felt the pain of government incompetence. And so people are really feeling the pain of decisions that are being made in Washington at every level. And, the most importantly, we always talk, as a military veteran and the son of a veteran, son of a mother who's a widow to a veteran, people ask, well, what can we do more for veterans? And what we do more for everybody is to take back control of our economy and put an end to this irresponsible government spending that's driving inflation. And beyond that, I caught the tail end of your last speaker. It's not enough to just reinstate our energy independence. We need America to be energy dominant, because that's good for America and that's good for the world.
Well, in order to do that, we've also have to take back the education and take back the information highway. So it's not just the kids out there, it's the ones that are being brainwashed by mainstream media. Oh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. So now we have to all have electric cars. Well, you can't make that electric car without the petrochemicals. And we don't have the petrochemicals because you're not letting us drill. And oh, by the way, you're telling us there's no more oil off the Atlantic coast, but you haven't tested for any new sites on the Atlantic coast since the 1970s. And that technology is so old. We've got new technology. There has to be reserves down there.
Right. And also, the only diversity that this administration is not talking about is energy diversity, right? I mean, between nuclear and other of the new advances we have in energy technologies, the United States is actually leading the world. I mean, if the hardcore environmentalists really want to make a difference, they should be heading over to Beijing and other places and demanding that they raise their standards to meet our standards. But even when you talk about, for example, 1,000-pound electric car battery, nobody's talking about the 500,000 pounds of materials, iron ore and cobalt that have to be taken from the earth. In many cases, in countries where there's slave labor and no environmental laws or restrictions. So this is all. And then what are we going to do with all these batteries that are going to seep into our water systems? So nobody's actually looking at the big. They don't care, because, like you were saying earlier, the whole idea behind assaulting our energy sector, it's an assault on capitalism and free markets. And so they want to make Americans, the radical left wants to make Americans dependent upon government. And so the way you do that is you basically destroy our economy.
Yeah, if you destroy the free market economy, and then government controls all business. It's the same way the Soviet Union did, the same way Communist China does. So we end up becoming a socialist nation. But in order to do that, you then have to first attack the Constitution. You have to attack the Founding Fathers, which they are doing now and very well. Our education system is allowing it to be done. Our mainstream media is supporting the lies. And
that's
that
a key
is where
component.
we have to,
and that's one thing. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And just think about law enforcement.
That's one thing that
law
President
enforcement
Trump exposed the corruption in big tech and media and government. And yes, you nailed it. Because the kill zone of our future is the minds of our children. And so if you can change the minds of our children, then you can change the future of the country.
And
That's true. And I was going to,
Curtis,
I was going to add law enforcement.
Well, Curtis, hang on just a second.
You
because
see how they're impacting.
Curtis, hang on just a second, because when you talk about the education, that idea was actually implemented by Hitler when he formed kindergarten. His idea was get the children away from the family early and let government do the education. And when they formed the public education system, they took the kindergarten model that Hitler used and brought it here to the United States.
Yeah.
And this has been going on now since the 1960s with the Department of Education.
Yeah, and that's why the radical left has really what they've done is they've perfected their system within our university system, and they want to take that down, into the elementary levels and preschool levels, and that's why they're so opposed to school choice, to homeschooling, and other options, because they want to be able to capture as much of the population in order to indoctrinate them.
Yeah. Now, Curtis, go on about the law enforcement.
Well, in the speech I gave last night up in Jacksonville, I started out by saying, if you want to rebuild something that's already existing, you need to tear it down. And that seems to be what the left is doing with our culture, our traditions, our society. And when it comes to law enforcement, they have made it so difficult for people who want to get into law enforcement to go into that field, because they're practically made demons out of law enforcement, personnel. And I believe there's a purpose for them doing this, and that is so that when we no longer have the adequate numbers of police to ensure our safety and protection, the government can step in and form a national police enforcement agency. Everything about them is nationalizing, and that's right. What a lot of people realize.
That's right, and that's completely counter to our traditions of state and local rule, which at the foundation of the Constitution.
Well, Commander, if you remember correctly, back in the under Bubba Clinton, they attempted to do some way of the federal government controlling all of law enforcement with community policing. We will give you these federal dollars if you initiate community policing, which law enforcement agencies across the nation just scoffed up. And back then, as an NYPD cop, I watched it happen. I says, why are we doing this? You're allowing the federal government to dictate how we run New York City as police officers. And they're doing it time and time again. There's always that little carrot at the end of the stick. But what is the prize you get? It's now more and more federal control. And we no longer have a Congress that sticks to the enumerated powers in the Constitution, the 13 powers. So when you get to Congress, we have seen legislation being put forward, but it never succeeds to having where you must state where in the Constitution allows you in Congress and the Senate to pass these laws, to make these regulations, to form these agencies. Show me in the Constitution where it is.
Well, exactly. And thank goodness, the Supreme Court, spoke about that with respect to these bureaucrats imposing these environmental restrictions that are impacting, Americans financially and corporations. And that's what, I say I'm a constitutional conservative. The Constitution is our guide. And I'm a firm advocate, like our great governors, like Governor DeSantis, who's reminded the United States people throughout the country that states' rights matter and local rule matters, but within the bounds of the Constitution. You always have to caveat it within the bounds of the Constitution, because there are people in California that say, oh, well, if we want states' rights and local rule, then we should be able to do this, like take away your weapons or whatever, right? But no, we have to respect states' rights and local rule within the bounds of the Constitution. The Constitution is our nation's birth certificate, but it's also our operating order, and that should be our guide for everything that we do in Washington.
No, because it states deliberately in the Bill of Rights that those that are not enumerated in the Constitution
that are not enumerated in the Constitution are then regulated to the states. So enumerated in the Constitution is the right to bear arms. So the states cannot take that away from you, which rightly the Supreme Court has adhered to. Well, now we have to go after them for the January 6th people, because that's violation of the Constitution, where they're sitting there all this time without bail,
Right.
without trial.
Right. Everyone's entitled
charges.
to due process. And,
exactly.
right. And going back to the Second Amendment, and people ask me about it, and it's an insurance policy against tyranny, plain and simple. It's an insurance policy against tyranny. And there's no elected, appointed, or government official who has the authority to infringe upon your constitutional rights, period.
But the left will tell you, but it's for the greater good. The greater good of whom? Mm-hmm. To advance your socialistic agenda, or to protect the individual freedom and can keep the republic intact. Right. And they have, their strategy is incremental advances, right? So what they want is incremental advances in order to establish a precedent for a restriction. And then they take that and they continue that until the next thing you know is you've lost all those rights. Well, so then when I come back to then, would you advance legislation then to keep to the enumerated powers? Yes. So, right. We need to hold firm on respecting the enumerated powers and the Constitution. And it seems, lately that's been the fight. I mean, you have one party, the radical left, is constantly engaged in an assault on individual rights, and they want to federalize and nationalize every power they can think of. And then you have the conservatives who are basically just fighting hard to make sure that our constitutional rights and our individual rights are not infringed upon. All right, now to move to a little bit of a different direction, our national security, and that is being assaulted on multiple fronts. You've got government contractors that are working both sides of the fence. They have contracts with China, Russia, all our enemies, Iran, and yet they also have contracts with us. There's no guarantee that our secrets, our technology is not being traded through these contractors. And we have no way to prevent them from doing that. We have the assault on the military equipment, where we contract that out to other countries. The F-35 is a perfect example, where they were having parts being manufactured in China. And I've got the Marine Corps Air Station right down the street from me, right here in South Carolina. And these guys were passing out in the cockpit because of the respiratory equipment was being manufactured in China. How do we know they didn't fudge around with it to deliberately cause these planes to crash? The steel to the plane shell was being manufactured in China, and there was problems with that. Our equipment is being farmed out. Our contractors are farmed out, and now we have the social engineering and the vax mandate on our military men and women, which is whittling down the morale and the troops. Yes, that's a purge, and you brought up some very important points that because of all the other chaos going on, people aren't paying attention to this, and I saw this from I've served in the Pentagon and also as a commander at a forward operating base and as a diplomat. And yes, we have this false perception that in order to get buy-in from some allies, or others, that we need to subcontract components of a weapon system so that they will buy. We really need to take a close look at our procurement laws, and we really, when it comes to national security, I think it goes beyond just the hardware that we're procuring, but also, our energy security. I wrote an op-ed about how we need to designate our energy sector as a national security asset to make it immune from some of these different initiatives that are disrupting the steady and cheap flow of energy from the United States. And then also, we need to designate our agriculture industry as a national security asset. We have the Chinese who are coming in
and buying. They bought one of our largest meat producers. They are buying up farmland in North Dakota and all around the country near sensitive military facilities. And this is something that you can't go to China and buy farmland near sensitive facilities. Like, we have to really accept the fact that we are at war with China. China's been Chinese. If you read Sun Tzu, he said, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without a fight, and that's what China has been doing for the last several decades. And they are subduing us without a fight. And their Belt and Road Initiative, where they're building the largest infrastructure in the world to support the mobilization of their military around the world, and it's being financed by third world countries in exchange for their rare earth minerals and energy. And they just negotiated a deal with the Saudis and OPEC countries to be able to buy oil and gas in Chinese yuan. So, we've seen things in the last couple of years here in the United States that we never imagined we would see. The one thing that we haven't seen yet is the collapse of the dollar, which could be coming.
With this administration,
Commander.
we've knocked out. Go ahead, Curtis.
Commander, do you think this is like the best opportunity for China to consider reclaiming Taiwan because of our weak president?
Yes, I think, and so, in my last assignment in NATO, I was a NATO Russia-Ukraine expert and advisor. I was one of the first U.S. guys into Ukraine after Russia went in the first time. But I can tell you this, that the one thing, if President Trump was president, Russia would have never gone into Ukraine, because they were developing their deterrent capability. They were getting the lethal aid and the training and everything that was holding them off. What this weak administration has done in our disastrous pullout in Afghanistan, that was basically a wake-up call to all of our adversaries that, hey, we can do whatever we want. If after 20 years of being entrenched in Afghanistan, the Taliban can take the country in 2 days without a shot being fired, and the U.S. tucks its tail between its legs and leaves, that emboldened Putin to go into Russia, and the Chinese have already made a deal, and they're applying their lessons learned in what they will be doing in Taiwan. And I think they're going to see that their window of opportunity is going to be between these midterms and the 2024 election. And so things are going to get really even more dangerous, I think, and hot with respect to Taiwan and Chinese pushing back.
Yeah, we're going to be in for a very, very rough time. And I'm telling people, hey, buckle up, because it is going to be a very bumpy ride. And
it's not just Asia. So we have, look, within our own hemisphere, we have 6 failed states. We have Venezuela, we have Cuba, we have Bolivia. We have these failed states within our own hemisphere that have become closer to China, that have become closer to Iran, and the Chinese have in Honduras. There's a new prime minister that makes AOC look like Joe Manchin, and she's openly said that the Chinese can utilize the facilities that the U.S. built there years ago in Sotocano, which is one of our largest Air Force facilities that we had built up in the mountains outside of Tegucigalpa. I've operated out of there. And so, yeah, we have some serious issues, and we really need to be positioned. The U.S. should be leading the divestment from China, the global divestment from China. And we only see a few congressmen and senators speaking about this. Senator Scott speaks about it frequently. John Cotton speaks about it. Marco Rubio speaks about it. Mike Waltz speaks about it a lot. But nobody's paying attention because there's so many other crazy things going on. That's just sort of a back burner issue for a lot of people.
Well, Benjamin Smith sent me a map one time after I was talking to him, and it hit me like a
2x4 against the head, because when we withdrew from Afghanistan, we opened up a corridor for China to go through Afghanistan and then through all the Middle East. So now China has control over a rising caliphate in the Middle East. And we're going to see a huge explosion coming from that area, aided by China. But Commander, people can find you.
And the earth minerals.
Rare earth minerals are the most important thing right now.
And Afghanistan has billions of dollars worth of rare earth minerals, but also beyond Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, which is the size of Europe with 1/10 the population, is the same thing. So China has its eyes on that, and they are positioning themselves all around the world. They've been buying up key infrastructure nodes, and they've been colonizing. So when the Chinese send 10,000 workers to Angola to build some bridges and some port facilities, they're staying.
Yeah.
The Chinese are also engaged in birth tourism to the United States, and they send thousands of people here to the United States to be born and get a U.S. passport.
Exactly. But we're out of time with you, Commander. People can find you, your campaign, at your last name, grimes.gop, grimes.gop, 15th District. They can help support your campaign, even if they don't live in Florida. They can at least send you $5 to help you with it. And I wish you good luck, and we'll have to have you come back on. There's so much more to talk about.
I'm looking forward to it. There's so much more to talk about, and thank you for doing your good work as citizens and keeping the people informed. So I commend you for that. And CS, I'm looking forward to seeing you again real soon, too.
Well, CS seemed to have dropped out, so hopefully you'll go back into the show.
Okay. Well, in any case, yeah, thank you for having me on, and I'm looking forward to coming on again. Grimes.gop.
Okay, God
Thank
bless.
you.
Take care. All right, check out Commander Dmitry Andrew Grimes, his website, grimes.gop. We've got our next victim in on the show here. He's coming out with a brand new book that hopefully will be released later this year called Postcards Through Hell. And I know I'm going to mess up the last name, but I'm going to try it anyway. Alan Chason. Did I say it correctly?
Yes, ma'am, you sure did. Thank you.
I did something right today. I'm patting myself on the back.
Yeah, well, I'm used to name assassination, so it's not a problem.
Well, of course, with my last name, that's very easy to do all the time. So don't feel so bad. All right.
Yeah, I believe we have my co-author, Ed Ford, is on the line as well.
Oh, all right. Is that the other number that's been sitting up there? Let's see if we can pull him up. And is this Ed Ford?
Yes, it is.
Oh, all right.
Hello.
I didn't expect you to call in, so welcome aboard.
Oh, thank you.
All right. You two got together and came up with this idea on writing this book. Tell us how you got together.
Well, really, it comes down to we worked together in Baghdad in 2005 on the Shark teams. I was with the Crucible team that was training the Shark teams, and Al was one of the medics assigned to one of the Shark teams. That's where we met. And then, he was a real good medic. And then when we got over to Afghanistan, we needed a medic, a lead medic. So Al was like one of the first ones we got over there to fill that billet after one of the teams got hit and they had some injuries. That's when we decided that there is a need for actual medics here and a medical program within our convoy program.
Now,
and
well, now you both were military, but now you're working as government contractors, correct?
Yeah, during the time the book was written, we were we were civilian contractors working for the State Department and DOD.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, the State Department does primarily PSD work, which we did in Iraq, and then when we went over to Afghanistan and started doing convoy ops, it was farmed out by the Department of Defense, primarily to deliver.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to ask what was PSD.
Personal Security Detachment or detail.
All right.
And that job was to provide high risk close protection to VIPs, government officials, et cetera.
Now, you ended up being also Pony Express, right?
When we started doing the mobile operations for Convoy in Afghanistan, we were delivering primarily mission critical supplies, fuel, ammunition, et cetera, to operational detachment alpha locations throughout Afghanistan. But eventually, there was a need to deliver United States mail, so we signed a separate contract for that, and eventually became known as the Pony Express.
Now, here you are, you're civilian contractors. You don't have the same equipment and backing as a military, but yet you're going through some of the baddest lands out there. How come the rest of us, the American public, doesn't know, or at least assume that you're a bunch of hot dogs, you're adrenaline junkies, but that's not the truth, is it?
No, we get mixed up with terminology like mercenaries and soldiers for hire, but that occupation evolved over time from the original executive outcomes, and we became known as security contractors. But a lot of people still use those old monikers.
Well, here you are. You're driving through unforgiving territory. You don't have. If you're going through there, do you tell the local units that where you're traversing? Do they give you any sort of a backup so you can bring these supplies and the mail to them?
Depends on the site that we're going to. I know one time we had to go to Organee to do a drop, and just turns out that we used to run that route all the time with no prior coordination with the Army. And then back in April 2010, my lead vehicle took a bad hit, and I lost a couple guys and two guys killed, and 3 more were wounded. And it took us 3 hours to get out of there, driving out of there, because nobody would come in to get us out or help us out. Then it was after that we said, all right, what we're going to do is coordinate with the Army, find out when they're doing their route, because the Army did regular missions through that valley.
Mm-hmm.
And all we had to do now was just find out when were they going through that valley and just coordinate with them. And because I know the second time I had to go back through that valley, I mean, I wasn't enjoying it, but I had done all my coordination with the platoon commander for the route clearance platoon. And as soon as we rolled in there, I saw him, I shook his hand, I said, yeah, we talked on the phone. And then right then and there, he got on the radio, talked to the Apache helicopters. They said, yep, they got you guys on visual. And I mean, that was like the safest I felt in that valley, because I mean, the Army knew we were there. They had their Apaches looking out for us. I mean, it was pretty nice. I mean, once you had to have the ability to coordinate and talk to the Army or in the U.S. military, so that way they would, if they could, they would help you out. They'd be like, all right, we're already here. We're going to keep an eye on you. Anything happens, we'll come and get you.
Now,
so that was there.
Now, what was the rule of engagement that you were allowed to have? Because you're not military, so you had to be under a different. I'm trying to think of the word.
The rules for the use of force, or the rules for the use of escalation of force, which is called the RUF. The military used the rules of engagement, which was called the ROW. And ours just involved a couple of extra steps process where we had to show that we intended to shoot. We had to shout at them. We had to hail, use pen flares or anything to give them an indication that we had those intentions. And eventually we would shoot to disable the vehicle, and then we'd finally end up shooting to kill.
Well, it sounds very similar to what the military, you throw things at them. Hey, gee, they're not going to throw the tin can back at you. They're going to be throwing some bullets at you instead. And they won't be coming at the same slow velocity. Now, as you had mentioned, Ed, that you had lost some guys, but we recognize the military when there is a loss of life. But what happens when you do lose the guys? Is there government compensation? Does anyone recognize you for the heroism? Or you just pushed aside and said, all right, well, you did your job, and that's part of the job?
There is compensation through the DBA, the Defense Base Act, that's the insurance plan we roll under. So if you're killed, there's an outright payment for the family. If you're injured, there's a medical plan set up for you to where either A, you recover, or B, you go back to full duty, or B, you're medically, there's a medical, you get a medical disability rating from the DBA, and then they usually cut you a check.
I think we only had 2 guys that were actually honored.
Yeah.
They were 2 Americans, and a couple of other guys that were killed were third country nationals, and they were treated like cargo. And then, of course, our local nationals, they fell under, Muslim ritual burial guidelines. Had to be buried within 24 hours, and the family preferred to do a lot of private stuff with that. But in terms of recognition, no. In terms of compensation, yes.
Yeah, it's not like we're going to get Bronze Stars or anything like that. Or Purple Hearts. We don't. We look at it like, hey, well, that's why we get the bigger paychecks. So.
Now you guys got together to write this book. Now, you also talk about the book, The 13 Hours of Benghazi. And we've done a dedication to that. We've had shows that we've done on it. But you were part of that, weren't you?
Oh, not at all. That's a comparable book. Those guys were contractors that were working for the CIA, and they have a ground branch or special activities division in part of the CIA, and we mentioned that only because it's very few books that were done on civilian contractors, and that's the reason 13 Hours was brought into the picture.
Now, what is
their book involved a single battle that lasted 13 hours. Our book involves several enemy contacts over a 3-year period.
Wow. So what are some of the stories that people can look forward to in the book?
Well, the storyline follows.
All right, let's start with Alan first, then Ed. Let's try that. Okay.
It's Ed's story. It's a lot about his transition from team leader to operations manager to program manager, and he basically had all the mission specs, and we just created a timeline from the point where we had started working until we ended up going end of mission, which was around 2012. The contract actually lasted until 2016, but there were some portions of the missions that were classified, so we didn't talk about anything after 2012. There's a lot of historical perspective in the book. Basically, it's Ed's story about how, he survived multiple contacts. He lost guys. Things got to get really, really bad in terms of the number of contacts. We ended up shifting over to running missions at night. We ran missions that were blacked out. And the level of danger at the height of the war was just, we eventually became targets ourselves with a bounty on our heads, and we just kept pushing through.
Wow. And these are all things that the public has no idea of what you guys are going through. The book, when is it scheduled to come out?
October 21st of 2022.
So this is coming out in just a couple of more months. So definitely I'm going to have to get a copy of it and get both of you guys back on. But Ed, you talk about some of the stuff that you go through, and since I haven't read the book, I'm just trying to patch the pieces together. You guys, like the regular military, well, you were military, also now have to, when you come back here to the United States, it's a whole new transition. You guys suffer from PTSD, from injuries, and all the government does is cut you a check and say, have a nice life?
Yeah, if you qualify for the check, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I mean that was like some people would refer to us as the plausible deniability. I mean, we're not actually military, so when we became casualties, it really wasn't like headline news. I think the only reason the Benghazi battle became headline news was because they lost the ambassador there. So I think if they didn't lose Ambassador Stevens, I mean, it would never have gotten the recognition that it would have got, that it received already.
Yeah. So it sounds like a very, very exciting book. And as you said, it comes over a 3-year period. What's some of the highlights you want to tell people about?
Oh, geez. I mean, number one, this is the business side of war that you got to look at. War is a huge business. And, me and Al were like on the lower end of that pay spectrum there. And I mean, we were making good money too. So it is a business. And, at times, you're dealing with the politics because, corporate wants to turn a profit. We got to work well with the clients, the locals, and with the military in order to keep rolling. And if we need help, they'll help us out. That's the big thing there. And that and plus, I mean, honoring our fallen, the guys that we lost. I mean, we just want to make sure that they're remembered.
Yeah, there 10 guys KIA in a 3-year period, and aside from honoring our fallen, is we want people to know about the brotherhood that we shared while we were there, and I mean, there's even a few funny stories about things that happened, in war. It's kind of weird because they got to have this little sixth sense of humor, just to stay sane. A lot of times.
Yeah, stuff that we thought was funny would never fly here.
Well, yeah, I kind of understand that. Having gone to some crime scenes, your sense of humor is a little bit different than the civilian sense of humor. Yeah. I remember watching an autopsy and turning around to my partners as they pull out the intestines, go, "How about spaghetti for lunch?" It doesn't. Yeah.
A few years from now, you're going to look back on that like, "Wow, did I really say that?" Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of historical perspective as well. That while we were there, things that had happened that had made international news. We were on the fringe of that. We delivered a lot of mail over to Coast, and that's where the CIA had lost all their guys at that FOB, and we were there like a week before that bombing had happened. They wouldn't let us on the base at all, and we ended up doing our transition. We dropped our cargo on the outside of the base. They came out and got it. That's how secure that base was. And then we leave, and then all of a sudden this triple spy is allowed on board, and he detonates an IED that kills 7 or 8 CIA guys. Those things are mentioned in the book because of the relevance to where we were at the time those things happened.
I'm dying to read it because all you did was just a brief summary of the chapters, which really, you try to piece together what you're trying to tell me. But you had some of the most difficult tasks to do because not only were you bringing supplies back and forth, as I understand, you were also doing recon, which is where you ended up with a bounty on your head.
Right. A lot of times they never knew we were coming, but they knew we were coming back, so we call it time, place, predictable. And we try to run our missions in early hours. We don't leave at the same time. We don't leave on the same route. We just try to mix things up, just to keep them, off balance, so to speak. But they know that if we're going one way, we have to return. And so they might miss us on the way up, but they're certainly looking for us on the way back.
Wow.
Yeah, you try to do things like time it through the Ramadan, like when they were all breaking their fast, because they didn't eat all day. So when they're all breaking their fast, boom, that's when you push out and roll out. So that way you can, while they're all eating, you're getting out of their way. You're getting out of the area.
Now, did you
So
work?
yeah, you'd have to do a little thing like that.
Did you also work with other multinational units too?
Well, we had Serbs that worked with us. They were civilian contractors. We had some Fijians, and of course, we had the our locals. They were pretty much the gunners up on the turrets.
And how were you? Your reception with the locals?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it would just depend on your ability to talk with them, shake their hands, be polite.
Never turn your back.
Yeah, don't turn your back. That's the big thing there, though.
I think in order to conduct business, you have to have a relationship with an Afghan-owned company, and so they buy into it for the purpose of expediting paperwork and obtaining weapons authorizations, vehicle purchases, operations, security operations certificates, and it kind of moves your pile to the top as opposed to having to wait for all these things to occur. When we wanted to buy vehicles in country, having they call it SOC A, which was the Afghanistan portion of the company, that would actually have connections that would move that paperwork towards the pot. We had to pay a little bit extra money to get it done, but at least we got our vehicles, you know.
No.
Ed, Alan.
Go ahead, Curtis.
I just had a quick question. I just wanted to know, because we've been in country for many years now. Do you think we're making a difference?
Not at all. I mean, in the short term, yeah, there were a lot of operations that were successful to some point, but then once it transitions over to control, everything just reverts back to its traditional values. And you know, if you push the Taliban out, you leave, the Taliban comes right back in. So nothing really changes over a longer period of time.
Well, now, when you were writing book, while you guys are writing this book, what's your emotion when you watched the fall of Afghan?
Well, I mean,
gosh, man, it was something else. I mean, for those of us who were outside the wire, we were working with the locals. You saw it come. I remember before I left country in December 2012, I ran into a buddy of mine, RSO, at the embassy, and we were just sitting down having lunch at the embassy, and we're talking, and I was like, yeah, when we leave 6 months, it's going back to the Taliban. And they're like looking at me like, dude, aren't you the optimist? 6 months, more like 6 weeks. So we all saw this coming. However, we should have had a better plan, and probably another airfield opened up, which was more strategically placed for that for the withdrawals. We should have a better plan to get all our people out, because they're finding out now that, if I'm not mistaken, about 50% of the people we pulled out of there had no business being on that airplane. And we still have our interpreters still stuck in that country in hiding.
Yeah.
And what they're doing now is they're starting out.
And of course,
that's how they're going to get them.
The Taliban is not going to stop looking for them. That's for sure. And so they have they have to keep on running. And the equipment alone, what we handed them was a gold mine of equipment.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's just talk about that height system, the system that they use to scan your retinas. The Taliban, they know how to use that now, and I mean, that's all they got to do when they want to do a sweep, to scan everybody's retina. And if you pop up on a database, you know, you're going to have to answer some real tough questions.
Well, that's the whole thing too. All the intelligence that we left behind. Why don't we just turn around and say, well, forget it. We're just going to admit complete defeat. America is now part of the Taliban. Yeah, that's basically what they
Right
said.
over there. Yeah, it was frustrating to watch. I mean, because like I said, we could have had a better plan, and this administration owned that plan for 7 months before. So they should have had a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, but they had none of that. I mean, they just went with the flow.
Wow. No, and
and the Pony Express ended in December 24th of 2016, but we still had brothers, Pony Express members that were still on the ground in Afghanistan during that withdrawal. And that was our concern. We were figuring out a way to try to get them out as well. There were people calling favors. They were calling up connections. They were just trying to help out because they needed an exit strategy as well. And they were stuck just like everybody else. So, it affected us. It affected us in that way.
now, were you able to get everyone out eventually?
Not
well,
all the
some guys
Afghans.
didn't choose. Some guys didn't choose to come out. Some guys stayed and working other contracts. They stayed in country. They maintained a low profile. Other guys were able to get out to different countries. Not so much like they were coming. They were trying to get into America. They were just trying to get out of Afghanistan by whatever means. Whether they went back home or whether they went to another country, that's a whole different story.
Wow. I mean, it's a very fascinating and interesting book, and I can't wait for it to come out. So definitely have to send me a copy so I can read it and get you guys back on. There's a character that you do introduce in chapter 26, Andy Langley. Tell us about him.
Man,
He was
Andy,
he was
that's
former,
probably one of the toughest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah, he was a former Marine, Vietnam vet, and after his time in the Marine Corps, he went over to then Rhodesia. He was a Rhodesian SAS. He was also Salute Scout, and there's a picture of him with one of the first captured Soviet PKM machine guns, and he's real proud of that. Like, oh yeah, I was there when we captured the first PKM machine gun. Then after Rhodesia, he went to El Salvador, worked for some folks over in El Salvador. And then after that, I think he's settled down now. He's got it all out of the system. But no, and then he did competitive shooting here in this country too for a while.
Wow.
I think
he was
he was like one of the top 10.
Top 5.
Yeah, there you go.
He's top 5 in the world.
Wow.
But at one point, he trained the Mujahideen when the Russians occupied Afghanistan. He was actually over there training their fighters, and those fighters ended up turning out to be Taliban later on in the picture. So.
Yeah, and it's a culture that we in the West don't understand, and we end up getting ourselves involved in these things without even realizing what we're putting ourselves into, and not even having a safe exit strategy. I mean, you leave a whole vacuum in the government, and what do you expect is going to happen? It's going to revert to what they traditionally are accustomed to, and they don't understand our values, and we don't understand theirs. So, why are we trying to impose our values on them?
Yeah, and
there was a basic need for democracy at one point because of the level of corruption that was involved, and I know that there's always cries for help, and if from a humanitarian perspective, I would understand the need to be there. Obviously, what happened with the World Trade Center, which was the pivotal point for going to Afghanistan in the first place, just never predicted it was going to last as long as it did. It's America's longest lasting war.
Well, actually, I think you can still say the Korean War because we've never had a peace treaty. But the active war,
That's
I would
true.
say, active war, I would say, would be Afghanistan. But still without a treaty would be Korea. Now, you also gave homage to your wives and family in the book.
which I find very touching. People tend to forget about the people back home.
Truthfully, we did too. After we put the book together and we were in the editorial process, one of the things came up about, where's the female perspective? And Ed and I kind of looked at each other like, well, we didn't have any girls on the contract. What are you talking about? And our editor is the one that brought it to light. She said, well, what about, how did your wives feel about you being gone? And what about the mothers of the guys that were killed in action? And so we conducted several interviews, after that critique that we got, and actually added that chapter in there only to offer that perspective. We never even thought about it.
Well, guys,
Yeah, it was
kind of sad. It's hindsight's 2020, but it was true, and she's the one that opened the door for us in terms of that perspective. So,
well,
very grateful.
Guys, the book is called Postcards Through Hell. Postcardsthroughhell.com is the website. It's coming out, as you said, in October. So I got to get a copy and get both of you back. Ed Ford, Alan Jason, thank you so much, and God bless you, and good luck on the release.
All right, and thank you. We got a book with your name on it.
Very much.
All right, make sure you sign it.
Yes, ma'am, I sure will.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Ed Ford, Alan Chasen, postcardsthroughhell.com. Check it out. And we've got our final victim, my favorite guy over at Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. Hans, welcome back once again. How are you today?
Well, you're a glutton for punishment today since you invited me back on a Friday.
Well, it's only on Friday, baby. Only on Friday, and always welcoming to you. And man, I had the movie 2000 Mules for my tea party, and I played it, and that was eye-opening. And these are things that you and I have been talking about the election fraud that has been going on, and it's slowly and surely starting to come to light, and people are realizing we do have a problem with our elections. Is anything going to change or secure our election coming up in the midterm, or are we still in a lot of hot water here?
Oh, no, we're much better off. The reason being that, look, it's been 2 years since the 2020 election. And the one good thing that came out of the 2020 election was a lot of state legislators and a lot of members of the public finally realized what I've been talking about for years, which is that there are holes in the security of our election process that need to be fixed. And as a result, about 24 states passed extensive election reform bills, making some really good improvements. They did that in 2021. They've also done it this year. I don't know if you saw, but Missouri just passed an extensive voter ID law, for example, that includes voter ID. Pennsylvania just had a bill. They actually convinced the Democratic governor of the state to sign that bans Zuck bucks, private funding of local election officials. And so in many places around the country, I'd say more than half of the states, things are much better, and we have security that's been improved in the election process.
Well, I know here in South Carolina, we managed to change a lot of the election laws, actually secure them a little bit better. That's right. Yeah. So we've been actually, my county GOP was in the forefront because we put together all the information, and the package went up to Columbia, sat down with the GOP leaders and said, hey, this is what you're proposing, but here are your loopholes. And this is where we propose you plug them up. So our county here in Beaufort was very, very instrumental in changing it here in South Carolina. And I'm proud of the guys and gals that work with them because they're all friends of mine.
Yeah, no, listen, South Carolina scores very highly in the election integrity scorecard that the Heritage Foundation has put together that basically grades every single state on how good or how bad their laws are when it comes to protecting the fairness and honesty of the election. Like I said, South Carolina is definitely the top rank of states.
Well, actually, tomorrow I will be up in Columbia because it's our state convention. So when I see Drew McKissick, who happens to be a friend of mine, I'll tell him you said that and put a smile on his face. How's that? Yeah. Now, you recently wrote an article about a Pamela Karlan. Who is she, and why should we be worried about her?
Yeah, I just couldn't believe it when I saw the news about this. Look, the U.S. Justice Department has basically been weaponized by Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, to target the political enemies of Democrats and Joe Biden. And for over 17 months, so really for the first 2 years of the Biden administration, the Civil Rights Division, that's one of the biggest divisions inside the Justice Department, and that is the division that enforces all of our federal voting rights laws, along with other laws barring discrimination. And for a lot of that time, it was being run by the woman who was the number 2 in that department, because the position, the number 1 position, requires Senate confirmation, and it took quite a while before they finally got someone confirmed in that position. So she basically was the power running the Civil Rights Division. She's the one, Pam Karlan, who was responsible for the frivolous, meritless lawsuits that the U.S. Justice Department has filed against Georgia for its passage of its election reforms, against Texas for its passage of its election reforms, and the lawsuit, and if you could believe this, that they just filed against Arizona. You know why? Because Arizona passed a law requiring election officials to do what? Verify the citizenship of registered voters. And the U.S. Justice Department has filed a suit saying that's discriminatory. Well, yeah, I certainly hope it is, because we shouldn't be, hopefully it discriminates against aliens who shouldn't be voting. But she's the person responsible for all that. Well, she just resigned from her position, and she resigned one day before the Justice Department turned over documents on her to a nonprofit group who had filed a Freedom of Information Act request, which revealed, if you can believe this, that the entire time she was a government employee, she continued to receive her $1 million a year salary from Stanford University, where she is a tenured law professor.
Now, didn't some of that salary also end up being donated to Stanford University?
Yes. So the whole time she's making her $1 million salary from Stanford, her $181,000 salary as a government employee is being donated to Stanford by the Justice Department. I mean, the whole thing is so outrageous, and it raises such ethics and conflict of interest issues that I just can't believe that this actually happened. But that shows you how the Biden administration works. I'm hoping that the Inspector General of the Justice Department will actually investigate this, because they sure need to.
You know, the same way that we have the NIH scientists and doctors getting royalty from drug companies and medical equipment manufacturers to approve their therapies and their medicines, which is tantamount to a bribe. She's doing basically the same thing in the DOJ, accepting bribes to subvert the system.
Well, I tell you, I agree, and I just, like I said, I just can't believe this happened. I mean, I believe it happened because this is the way the Red works. But it's just shocking that this would happen, and nobody's covering it. The mainstream media couldn't care less about this. Now, you and I both know what would the headlines be, the New York Times, the Washington Post, if a conservative from some corporate entity, or even from a university, some conservative had worked in the Trump administration's Justice Department while earning $1 million year salary. It would have been screaming headlines on page one. But this professor, Pam Carlin, does it, and nobody cares.
No, not at all. And yet she's still teaching, which means she's also still brainwashing our youth. So there's no investigation. Right. She's still in a position of influencing policy, and the blind eye is turned to it. So how can we expect an honest, open society if we have people like this subverting it? It's only people like you that, expose it. Right.
Well, it's just another sign, really, of how corrupt this administration is. Those kind of claims were made during the Trump administration without justification. But here, this one, this just one instance shows how corrupt the administration is. And if you think it doesn't go all the way to the top, then folks must have missed the fact that just this week, information came out about the fact that Joe Biden, who, has said repeatedly he knew nothing about the foreign business that his son was doing. I don't know if you saw it, Andy, that the visitors logs in the White House now show that he met with 14 of Hunter Biden's business associates while he was the vice president in the White House.
Wasn't he photographed playing golf with some of them?
Yeah, I think he may have, but the point of that is it's very clear. I mean, talk about corruption. It's very clear that Hunter Biden was using his father's office as vice president, and his father was helping him score business and make profits, make money. And I think that's the worst kind of public corruption you can see, certainly involving the White House.
Wow. Now, you're the manager of the Election Law Reform Initiative, and you're still uncovering fraud and actual crimes. And all of a sudden, we're saying we're starting to see people start to report on this. Now, I saw something recently that Arizona has just turned around and said something like over 65,000 ballots have been invalidated when Joe Biden took Arizona only by a mere 10,000 votes. But we still have no idea whether or not these votes were for Biden or for Trump. Are we ever going to see the truth come out about this?
Probably not. I think it would take law enforcement investigations to determine the credibility of those kind of claims, and no one seems to have any interest in doing that. No, because here are some of the cases you list. You have Kimberly McPherson out of Troy, New York, who was city council. You think an elected official would have some integrity? Oops, wait a minute, I forgot. That's an oxymoron. Elected official and integrity should not be in the same sentence. No, and she was convicted of, in her reelection, casting absentee ballots for voters. And, for those who say, oh, this is rare, this doesn't happen all the time, in 2014, 4 residents of the city, including another member of the city council and the city clerk, were also convicted of the same kind of thing, forging the signatures of voters and submitting fraudulent absentee ballots. The same behavior 10 years later, almost 10 years later, that is still going on in Troy. And by the way, this should be no surprise, because at the time, back in 2014, one of the individuals who was convicted, who was a local Democratic campaign consultant, said that this kind of absentee ballot fraud was, quote, a normal political tactic in local elections.
Yeah, Anthony DeFiglio, a local committeeman.
Yeah.
You also had a former Democratic U.S. rep, Michael Ozzie Myers, with over 13 felonies. This guy's a real piece of work.
He is. he's going to prison after being convicted of voter fraud, bribery, and a number of other things. And that should be familiar to him because it'll be the second time he went to prison. He was a congressman from Pennsylvania. He was a Democratic congressman. And he was thrown out of Congress in 1980 when he was convicted in the abscam sting. Look, you and I are old enough to remember that. Your listeners might not, but folks may remember.
You're putting a woman's age out there. Shame on you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. But the FBI, set up a sting operation that netted several members of Congress. They had somebody playing a fake Arab sheik who was offering bribes in order to get votes on certain bills before Congress. And this guy, Myers, was one of the guys who accepted the money. So he went to prison and was thrown out of Congress. Well, when he came out of prison, he became a political consultant. And he now has pleaded guilty to 13 felonies. And what he was doing was he was bribing election chiefs, the people who are the officials who run precincts, polling places in Philadelphia. He was bribing them to stuff bogus ballots into the ballot box on behalf of his clients, which were candidates at the local, state, and even federal level. And this went on in multiple elections. Two of the precinct polling place officials, by the way, have also already pleaded guilty to accepting bribes and admitted they stuffed hundreds, if not thousands, of bogus ballots into ballot boxes in elections in Philadelphia.
But you actually did have an election overturned. The results from the June 2021 in Compton, California, a runoff election for city council. I actually had an election, overturned. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And what that case shows is something that I talk about a lot, which is so many elections in this country are very close and are only decided by a tiny margin of votes. This city council race in June of 2021 in Compton, California, was decided by one vote. And after the election, half a dozen individuals were indicted for voter registration fraud. They claimed to live in Compton, even though they didn't live there, and absentee ballot fraud, including, by the way, the city councilman who won by one vote. So he won his election due to fraud that he was part of, and all these folks have now pleaded guilty, and the election's been overturned by a local judge.
Now, I'm going to ask you, do you know about the ERIC system, the Electronic Registration Information Center?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have been battling that, and our state is a member of it. There are now 31 states that have joined it. Now, it's supposed to help purge and keep clean the election rolls, but it seems to have the exact opposite in most instances.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's true. I do think there are some major problems with ERIC, but what I would tell you about that is that, look, at the moment, there's no alternative. Okay, what ERIC does is all of the member states send their statewide voter registration list to ERIC. ERIC compares the lists, also checks death records, and each state is supposed to get back a report that says, here are the people who are registered in your state who are dead. Here are the people who are registered in your state who are now also registered in other states, which gives the states the ability to investigate that, potentially take people off the list. Like I said, there are problems with the way ERIC does its job. There are problems with the people who work at ERIC. And I think the states who are members need to demand changes in the way ERIC is run and who the personnel are running it. But at the moment, there's no alternative. There is no other program anywhere in the country that allows states, for example, to compare their statewide list with other states to find people who are registered in two different places. So I don't think states necessarily should get out of it. I think what they should do is try to get those changes made. And if those changes are not made, then yeah, I think the state should look into creating a new system, a new program, an alternative to ERIC that will do the kind of work that's needed.
Yeah, because here in South Carolina, in the last election, we passed it where one of the reforms is that you must purge every year the voter rolls of people that have passed away, people that have moved, and clear that out, people that may be registered in two different areas. And each county must do that and then go up to the state. So we've initiated it by law, but what system do you use? And if ERIC is not reliable, then it's going to be up to us, we the people, to put their feet to the fire and say, hey, listen, obviously there's problems with this ERIC. Either you come up with something else, like you said, or you force them to change it. And I hope you're right, because a lot of people are ringing the bell on ERIC and saying it's not a good thing.
Well, like I said, at the moment, there's no alternative to it. By the way, there used to be an alternative. There was an alternative program. It was called the Kansas-Missouri Interstate Cross-Check System, and it did exactly the same thing. It compared statewide voter lists of different states so they could find people who have moved away or registered in more than one state. But that system is no longer in business, and one of the reasons is that all these left-wing groups started suing states who are participating to get them to stop using it, because they didn't want states finding people who were registered in more than one state. So unfortunately, that system is no longer in operation. So like I said, at the moment, there's no alternative to ERIC.
Well, then why aren't the blue states suing ERIC? Because there's only a handful that are not members of ERIC. I mean, I'm surprised.
Well, they've just decided not to participate.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
I mean,
California,
the states that don't want to
Massachusetts,
participate
New York.
just aren't participating.
Yeah. Well, that means that they
Well,
don't.
they don't want to get any. They don't want any information that will take anybody off their list. So that's why they're not members of ERIC.
But then again, you have the state of, I believe it's Massachusetts, that wants to give driver's license to illegals. Well, the next step is voter registration, motor voter, right?
Yes, if they don't have good precautions in place, then they're not going to be able to keep aliens from registering to vote.
Yeah.
But look, that's not just Massachusetts. There's already 12 states that unfortunately made the decision to give driver's licenses to aliens who are in the country illegally.
Mm. Well, it's funny because I got my mom a state ID. God bless her. She turned 90 July 4th. And the first time she voted in I can't tell you how many years, because she was living in the Virgin Islands and federal elections were not on their thing. And the first thing they did was motor voter with her. You know, check the box and we'll get you registered to vote. And that's a scary thing. That is a very scary thing. Now, here in South Carolina, you're supposed to check whether or not you're an alien, resident alien or not. But there's nothing there to say whether or not you're a resident alien and illegal at the same time.
Right.
It's scary.
Right. So they don't, in most states, they don't do anything to verify when you claim you're a citizen, which is why it's so bizarre, but it's very revealing of the left, that Merrick Garland Justice Department, the Biden administration, is suing Arizona because, in fact, they want to try to verify the citizenship of registered voters.
Oh, shame on us. Shame on us that we follow the Constitution. How dare we? But then again, we had a victory in New York where they said resident aliens cannot vote in the elections. That was at least a victory in the right step.
It was. And that's a good thing. It was the city of New York which had passed a local ordinance saying aliens would be able to vote in local elections, and a state court there just recently said you can't do that.
Well, you are working hard to unearth, and your Heritage Foundation does keep a database, which is a sampling. It's not every single instance, and you're doing serious work there. But you also wrote a book about it, Our Broken Elections, that people can find up on Amazon. Correct?
That's right. It's called Our Broken Elections, How the Left Changed the Way You Vote.
Well, let's hope we change it the wave back. And we'll see what happens with this upcoming midterm election, which is, believe it or not, just in a few months. Holy moly, Hans.
Yes,
we're
it's
going to
coming
be in
up.
for an interesting ride here.
Yeah, we are. It's coming up very fast.
And I'm waiting to see what shenanigans the left is going to pull on us in the interim. And I wouldn't even ask for predictions.
We'll see.
Well, Hans
Right.
von Spakovsky, it is always fun to have you on here. And I look forward to the next time you grace us with your presence.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Hans von Spakovsky, you can find him at heritage.org. And Curtis, we're going to have your ambassador friend next week. Mark Tapscott will be back, and Heritage will send us a new guest.
Yeah.
So we look forward to having another fun next week. We are back up on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, type in the name of the show, put a space in the middle. Southern Space Sense, capital S on both words. And it should come up, and become a member of that page. Because right now I've got 0 subscriptions because I only got it up and running just about 2 days ago. So I need y'all to go there and sign up on my YouTube page and fight back the censorship.
Now, I don't know about South Carolina, but here in Florida, we start our early voting on the 8th of August. When do you guys start?
I got to double check. I think it's 2 weeks before, and I don't know. I have to let my members know. Usually it's about 2 weeks prior. But with that, Curtis, we're down to our last 3 minutes. So I will sign off with my friend Gary Pecorella, Save America. So until next Friday, I say good night and God bless. Oh.
I'm praying for this land I love, America, America, the home of the free. But there are people making plans to change America. They've no respect for her or what matters most to me. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Mourn for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us. I hope it's not too late to save America. Do you hear our battle cry across America? We've got to rescue her. You know it's up to me and you to see the truth behind their eyes. Don't change America. God bless America.
90 seconds.
And the red, white, and blue. That's why I stand for the flag and I kneel at the cross. Mourn for the friends I have loved and lost. And I still believe in God we trust, and the freedom our forefathers granted us.
60 seconds.
It's not too late to save America. us, then we still believe
10 seconds.
we trust in the freedom our forefathers granted us. We know it's not too late to save America. Save America. Let's save America. Together we can save America.